Today I'm talking with Hugh Newman. He's an author, explorer, and the founder of the Megalithomania Conference, which just hit its 20th year. And Hugh doesn't sit behind a desk and theorize. He goes out to these sites and gets his hands dirty. He co-discovered a winter solstice alignment at Karahan Tepe, one of the oldest engineered sites on Earth. We're talking 11,400 years old. And what he's finding there pushes back the timeline on everything we thought we knew about early civilization.
Yeah, pushes back the timeline again? Well, at this point, they should just leave a blank page and say, we'll get back to you.
In this conversation, we get into Gobekli Tepe, underground cities, standardized units of measure that shouldn't exist yet, and a sneaky visit to some caves under the Giza Plateau that are now bricked up forever. Hugh also made a case that the Sphinx might not be a lion, it might be a leopard, and he's got the evidence to back it up. Oh, we also get into everyone's favorite subject, giants.
Yeah, everyone except the Smithsonian.
That's true, and we get into that. This one covers a lot of ground. And honestly, the math alone is worth the ride. Yes, math. Let's go down to the basement. Hugh, welcome to the basement.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
How do you go to creating the conference, it's still running, right?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, this is our 20th anniversary.
Oh my goodness.
So we having a bit of a celebration this year. So this is the Megalithomania Conference. So this is what we've been doing since May 2006. I founded this with John Martineau, who's also my publisher with the Wooden Books, and Gareth Mills. I pretty much run it myself with my own team now, and it was really set up, and it's quite intriguing when you look at what's going on online nowadays. It was set up as a forum, like a public forum, to have the alternative historical information and researchers with the academics all on the same stage, but in a very kind way.
Right.
Connecting with each other.
Not a debunking debate.
No, it was just a respectful way, so we could have a multidisciplinary look at megaliths, ancient sites, the ancient mysteries, and have it as an open forum. We now have top archaeologists and top historians and anthropologists coming along, next to people who are talking about what they deem as fringe or outrageous stuff, and it's actually quite fun. And so a lot of the academics know each other, so one or two of them came along and they had such a good time, they actually recommended it. So it's easy to get some really cool academics to come along.
So like, how was that? Yeah. Was he cool? And it's like, no, it's great.
No, and it's not like online, the whole Flint Dibble, Graham Hancock thing. There's all this big, nasty kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
And we just don't have that. We're very, very nice, very polite, very respectful, and it works brilliantly. And we've stuck to that focus every year for the last 20 years.
I'm glad you said multidiscipline, because what I like about your research is you bring in acoustic engineers, electromagnetic research, all that stuff. I think that's missing in archaeology.
I think you're right. Yeah, this is one of the things that kind of bothers me a little bit, and a lot of other researchers, is that archaeologists do brilliant work. Don't get me wrong. They are very well trained in, preserving, digging up, analyzing these sites, dating it and everything else. But when it comes to things like astronomy, acoustics, or mythology, or symbolism, even subtle energies and things like this, it's not something they're interested in or trained in. And I think this is where the problem lies, in interpreting these sites and having a voice about these sites, because you need to have this multidisciplinary look at them, because these people back then, they had the same brain capacity as us. They may have been smarter than us.
Sure.
We don't know. And so they were obviously into lots of interesting things. I mean, you just look at the symbolism at sites like Gobekli Tepe, and the abstract art and creation of these sites. It's insane. It's just, wow. It's like these guys were just like master artists as well as being master builders. And so I think you really need to approach it from all these different angles. I'm not saying I'm a specialist in all these different things, but when you put it on a conference, it's great. You can invite people to come and you can actually share research. Say, would you mind looking at this? I want you to check this out. And you can present it, and they can, that's interesting. I didn't realize, that astronomical alignment was there. That fits in with what I'm doing. And so I think it's really important. But I think archaeology nowadays, as you know, with the other guests you've had on this show, you need to approach it from all these different angles. It really has to be done.
Why do you think there's gatekeeping?
I think it's just part of the paradigm. I think it's part of the nature of any discipline like that. They want to keep it within what they're doing. But one of the things I have learned, and this is a friend of mine who actually comes to our conference, she is actually in her 20s, and she's now doing a proper archaeology degree, doing a proper course about it. And there's actually a thing that she told me. We were having lunch after an event we were doing in Avebury Stone Circle, of all places, because there's a pub in the middle of Avebury Stone Circle. And she was telling me now they actually open and they want information from alternative people, because a lot of the discoveries being made, and this has happened a lot over the last decade or more, several decades, a lot of discoveries are being made by non-academics, non-archaeologists. And so how do you address that in archaeology when the archaeologists are supposed to be the only ones making the discoveries and talking about them? And she said now there's an acceptance within that. And so that's just now, though.
That's new.
That's now, happening now. It's not going to probably help us with what we're doing at Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, because the archaeologists have their own agenda. They want their own they want to be the main voice on it. But now things appear to be changing, at least in England, at least this one person I spoke to about it.
Speaking of gatekeeping, this reminds me, I just covered Andrew Collins and Tomb of the Birds. Is it true that you were down in that cave system?
Yes.
Oh, what? Were you not supposed to be?
Not really.
Was this where you found a gate open? What's that story?
Okay, let me tell you this story. Yes, it's one of the stories we're going to get into. We've got a few, I'm sure. So this was back in, I think, November, must be the year before last. And obviously Andrew had discovered the Tomb of the Birds and also what became known as Collins Caves. Zahi Hawass named it.
Wasn't he banned for what?
Kind of, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're not that strict with that kind of thing. And this was back in 2008 when he first discovered it. So we went, we were in Egypt doing a tour there. We were kind of with our group had finished. Me and Andrew were hanging about for a couple of days. And we just thought, you know what, let's go and take a walk over there. Problem is I was wearing my shorts and like kind of, tennis shoes or whatever I was wearing at the time. Could have been flip-flops. And we thought we'd go and have a quick look. And there was no lock on the gate. And we're like, this is interesting. So we thought, we'll just pop in and take a look, and I was not prepared. Luckily I had my flashlight and my camera with me. So
you didn't deliberate for 1 minute. Should we go in? You just said...
No, we were deliberating a lot because you can get, sure. you can get in serious trouble for that now. And so, we got in, and at the front part of it, the Tomb of the Birds area is actually kind of carved out. There's lots of little chambers, but then at the back, there's like a kind of hole in the wall. And you walk through there and there's this huge created chamber, partly carved out, and then it leads through for about a quarter of a mile through these caves, and it is the most spooky, mind-blowing place I've ever been in my life. I think it really kind of got me. And Andrew hadn't been in there since 2008, so he was overjoyed.
Sure.
So we did all that. We filmed it. We got out. No one was around. No one saw us, thank God. And then now they bricked it up. So literally the last few weeks, we had reports. Andrew was over there. Excuse me. Andrew was over there and actually found it'd been bricked up, so you can't actually go back in there now. But the reason that I found that so interesting, because a few months later, in March of last year, they discovered potentially all this stuff under the Giza Plateau, which, interestingly, the Tomb of the Birds and Collins Caves, or NC2 it's called, leads to. It's almost in that direction, towards the Central Pyramid.
Is this the research from the Italian group?
Yeah.
So it kind of correlates with what you found? It
does, weirdly, yeah. And this is what's so interesting. I mean, and there's a lot more going on under the Giza Plateau. I mean, it's known about. There's a lot of stuff known about under the Giza Plateau. It's not just, what the Italians have discovered. There's the Osiris shaft. There's chambers underneath the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple that Robert Temple had been looking at. There's the whole kind of Sphinx area, obviously, under the paw of the Sphinx.
That's right.
And so it was just to get under there and have this experience of going into these caves really blew my mind. It really got me. And now no one's ever going to be able to go in there again.
It's a shame.
It is a shame. I mean,
if you had to guess and date those caves.
Well, the thing is, the front part of it, it's all carved out. This is like a created kind of tomb area.
Yep. But
then the back part is mostly natural. And so I think very few people, even in ancient times, knew about that. I think that was like a very secret, this is what Andrew writes about. It's a very secret, maybe an initiatory area, where people will go into, some initiations or rites of passage and things like this. We really don't know. And so, there's something, something odd going on there. And the fact that they bricked it up suggests they don't want anyone else going in there.
That says a lot.
It is a safety issue as well. It's pretty dangerous because right at the end, you have to kind of, if you want to go any further, you have to kind of go down this kind of almost, it's called the tube. And I can't fit down there. Andrew couldn't fit down there. But a small person could probably squeeze down there. You might be able to get in there next time.
Too claustrophobic. I can't do it.
And then that leads further along.
Does this connect all the way to Khafre's?
Well, it's in that direction.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and some scans, there was actually some similar SAR type scans done back in 2008. And it seems to indicate that it does lead towards Khafre's pyramid. And so it could be connected with that discovery that was made there.
Has anyone done GPR in that area to confirm?
There has been some done, yeah. I think more needs to be done, a lot more, because there needs to be verification of what was going on there. Because we have, the SAR scan technology is very controversial. This is Filippo Bionde, Armando May, and other team members. And they found potentially outrageous depths of these kind of cylindrical chambers going down towards these giant square chambers and other features. But someone needs to go on that in an official capacity with GPR technology and just go round the Giza Plateau just to verify, what they've discovered, because they've had other people using the similar technology and finding the same things as them as well. That's come out recently.
I think Tomb of the Birds came up because I was studying the Hawara Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And it's once again, I don't know why we're not prioritizing exploring these places. They seem to be the most important discoveries on Earth.
Yeah, I think with Egypt, there's so many sites. You can just, it's overwhelming when you go there. It's hard to cope with, and they're so magnificent, all of them. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I can understand why they're kind of hesitant. Also, there's a lot of political stuff there. There's a lot of kind of issues with permissions. It's all there's lots of bureaucracy. But when it comes to getting under the Giza Plateau, there's a lot of water there. You can't go down that far anyway. It'd be a huge amount of pumping to get it out. Hawara, on the other hand, is interesting, but it's all collapsed. I mean, you can see like the shape of some of the labyrinth when you go there,
Yep.
but it's all collapsed. It's all so much sand on top of it,
And flooded, I think.
flooded as well, because you got the water level there as well.
Yep.
You got canals that have been carved right through it, and so just to get down there again, it's a huge pumping situation, a huge amount of money and effort. But there are teams now, independent teams, looking at that, connected with the SARSCAN people. A gentleman called Trevor Grassie's been focused on that as well. And so, let's see what happens. Because I'm sure it kind of has to be done. That's the great thing about the internet nowadays, because you can you put pressure, into what should be looked at. Partly what happened at Gobekli Tepe, which we're going to get into.
We are.
And so that's another place that, that needs to be, it feels like, why are people going so slow? Why are people kind of just digging down, getting on with it? But there's always reasons why they can't do everything immediately.
Well, before we go to Turkey, let's speculate for just a second. Did the Egyptians build the pyramids, or did they find those?
That's a good question. That's one of the big unknowns. I mean, you look at the technology to create that, it's outrageous. I mean, I personally think the people who built Gobekli Tepe, they were somehow connected with the people who built the pyramids, because Gobekli Tepe's got the same kind of quality, the abstract construction, absolutely superb quality of stoneworking. And I think there's some connection there, because they found connections between these two areas going back to the time of Gobekli Tepe. Now, whether they were built, official dates of 2,500, 2,600 BC, that's a whole other question. Because you've got people like Professor Robert Temple. He's done some surface luminescence dating on some of the stones, on some of the pyramids on the Giza Plateau, and actually found dates of at least a few hundred years earlier. So then that discounts those pharaohs who are credited with doing it. So then that raises more questions, even if it's just a few hundred years. That disputes the whole thing. But I think they could be much older. I think actually the underground areas are much older, and the pyramids may have been added slightly later, towards the official dates. That's just my opinion. More research obviously is being done out there. So
where do you stand on Robert Schoch's research on the Sphinx and John Anthony West?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Yeah. The water erosion around the kind of channels around the kind of Sphinx pit, which is really, really interesting, actually.
It looks like water to me.
It does. It does. And I think that he was pushing for dates, going back to the time of Gobekli Tepe, like nearly 11, 12,000 years ago at some point.
Younger Dryas flood.
Yeah, and there's more, but it was much more lush back then, the whole area. And so you could imagine there was a lot more water. And also there were channels like kind of going all the way up to each of the pyramids anyway. There's water right there, right next to it. So I think it is quite plausible that it's that old. And I think if anything on the Giza Plateau connects with Gobekli Tepe, it's probably the Sphinx and what was going on underground as well.
Have I heard you speculate that the Sphinx is maybe a leopard and not a lion?
That's something I have speculated about.
What? Why would you think that? That's just very interesting. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, because, okay, you've got, there's a few things. I mean, this goes back to Karahan Tepe, okay, which is 11,400 years old, southeast Turkey. It's one of the sister sites to Gobekli Tepe. There's a lot of leopard symbolism there. There's also, it's the same era, potentially, as the Sphinx, if we're looking at these old dates, because I know Graham Hancock and others, and Schock and John Anthony West, they were saying that the Sphinx faces the rising of the equinox and Leo in 10,500 BC.
Right.
Because that's what would rise on the equinox as part of the whole processional kind of cycle. And I thought that was really intriguing because at Karahan Tepe, you have leopard symbolism everywhere. Not lion, leopard. You get it at Gobekli Tepe, you get it at all the sites. It's very strong symbol found there. And when we found our winter solstice alignment, we also believe we've possibly found an equinox alignment as well, because the head that we've been researching that has the light get on the head and illuminate it on the solstice, or the winter solstice, actually faces east, looking towards the rising of the equinox and Leo. So we speculate that there could be a leopard to the people of Tepeler or the Karahan Tepe, Gobekli Tepe people. Also, if you go to Egypt, you look at the old gods of Egypt, like Thoth or Tahuti.
Yep.
His consort or wife, Sechat, she was, an architect. She was supposed to be an architect. She was also into metrology, measurements and geometry, things like this. And she was always wearing a leopard skin outfit. And she was the leopard lady almost.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you have this leopard connection with ancient Egypt. And possibly then, and it was quite strong back then. I mean, there's other leopard symbolism and lion symbolism back then, obviously. But so there could be, why does it have to be a lion? Why can't it be a leopard? Why can't it could be Anubis, dog. This is what Robert Temple suggests. So I think it's possible. But again, we've got no clear evidence of that. It's just speculation at the moment because makes it connect with Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe.
So at Gobekli, can you just paint the picture for us? 1963 discovery, they think it's gravestones, and then 1994 with Klaus Schmidt. And what was that like?
Yeah, because so back in the 60s, we had Peter Benedict, and there was a team of archaeologists doing kind of surveys, sort of scans, walking around the landscape, and they found Gobekli Tepe. That's what's so strange. They found some stones lying around. They thought they were kind of gravestones, Islamic gravestones or Byzantine kind of ruins. Didn't think anything of it. And it wasn't until Klaus Schmidt, German archaeologist, who was doing work at a site called Navali Churi, and also another site called Gertrude Tepe, I think, as well, and a couple of other places. And he noticed, because of his research at Navali Churi, which we can get into, this is a site I want to talk about.
Sure.
He found the symbolism was the same. So this is probably the same era. But when he looked at the hill, he could see it was a huge artificial hill, like a mound, a tepe, or a hoyuk, you call it in other parts of Turkey, and realized there was something significant going on there. And the family who owned the site had found these two statues there and actually presented them to the museum. And one of them was this very fertility. There's a guy with the erect phallus, and they were kind of embarrassed by it, and they gave it to the museum. The museum wouldn't take it. There's all this debate about it. There was another sort of top of a Tepeler, kind of broken, with a kind of lizard coming off it in 3D relief. And when he saw those in the museum, he said, where did these come from? Found out where they came from, got to the site in 1994, and eventually thought, right, something going on here. We need to kind of get into this. And this is when they started the excavation, I think 1995.
Why did he not publish or go public with that for a few years?
Yeah, it didn't come out to the year 2000.
Right.
I don't know. That I don't know. I think in archaeological circles it was being talked about, but I think they just wanted to make sure what they got was valid. It took a lot of work to get even down to the first layers because it's so heavily buried. That's the thing about these sites. They're buried, properly buried. That's why they're so well preserved.
Right. Why has only a small percentage of Gobekli been excavated all this time?
That's another good point. I mean, when it comes to Gobekli Tepe, it's a huge site. We're talking multi-acre site. It's massive. And so it's very deep. It's buried. So there's a huge amount of debris and rubble, and they have to do it so carefully. I mean, they've removed thousands of tons already. That's the thing. People don't realize how much they've removed. I can show you a couple of it just so people can get a sense of this. We can have a look at a couple of images of Gobekli Tepe.
While you're pulling that up, how do you feel about the intentionally buried theory? Was it?
That's another good question. When it comes to Gobekli Tepe, there was what is known as a slope slide occurred. So you've got the enclosure there at the top of the image there. That's enclosure D. Mm-hmm. And all around that, after Gobekli Tepe was constructed in 9600 BC, for about 1500 years, it started growing almost like a settlement. So structures were being built up on the hill just above it. And so eventually they caved in at some point and actually filled in some of the larger enclosures. And then this was then later covered over and rebuilt on, then covered over again. And then when they eventually decided to leave, they covered the whole site. And so there is definitely deliberate burial, but also some accidental burial as well. These slope slides that happened.
Were they trying to preserve it?
At the end of it's huge, yes. I mean, that's the unusual thing, because I think there's a bit of both. I think ideas changed through this whole time frame, this 1500 year time frame, and they would accidental burial. They still preserved it though. Even before they buried it, they put artifacts, statues in place. They re-erected and repaired T-pillars, put everything back, and then filled it in. And so it was like, that's strange. But other places like Karahan Tepe, they deliberately smashed up parts of it and then buried it, almost ritually decommissioned it.
Oh, okay.
So you get that as well. You get this broken element to it, then it's buried. But whereas certain parts of Karahan Tepe are preserved because that's what they wanted to make sure people could see. And this is where we get to the winter solstice thing we'll talk about shortly. But so I think there's a bit of, I mean, if you look at this image, this just shows you what we got here. Yeah, this just shows you the kind of site. That's the site there. That's the main area. This is like the southeast depression, they call it, where a few of the, only like 60 feet wide each. And then if you look at the main site here, this is the GPR scan they did of the site. And these are all the other enclosures they haven't even uncovered yet.
Would that push the date back if they went deeper?
Could be. I mean, the thing is, though, they have got to bedrock already. So, and that's where they're getting the 9600 BC dates. Okay. But before Klaus Schmidt died, he claimed, and he said this to me and Andrew when we were there once, he said that he thinks they're going to find stuff going into the Ice Age there. Wow. 14,000 years ago. And now other sites in the area are older than Gobekli Tepe now. They're finding sites like Chakmak Tepe, which is actually not too far away. There's sites up near the Tigris River, hundreds of miles away, called Bonchoklu Tarla, and a couple of other places.
I was going to ask you about that. Tarla's older, yes?
Some are older, yeah. They don't have the big T-pillars. That's what distinguishes Gobekli Tepe. So compared to other sites, that's when I first went there before they built the roof over it.
Oh, that's Murderer's Row right there.
Yeah, you got me, Graham Hancock, and Andrew Collins, obviously. And this is like back in 2013 when I first visited there. So it's actually when Graham first visited there as well. And it's an absolutely fascinating place. And this is just a scan I got of one. This is enclosure D, relatively recently, a few months ago. They've actually cleared more of it now. So these giant T-pillars were actually kind of found like this, but with all the rubble around it holding them all up in place. And so a lot of it was preserved. That's what's so interesting to me. You know, they actually preserved this, and the bedrock there, they cut down into the bedrock and created the floors and the curbs around the edge, which they would slot T-pillars into. And I think all these walls that you see here, these small brick walls, they were added later, in my opinion. Yep. Because I think everything was balanced. It was kind of held in place maybe by certain types of scaffolding or other stones.
So is that floor level and polished?
It is level, yeah. It's level.
And this is pre-pottery.
Yep. And they also, in some of the floors, I'm not sure what the next image is, some of the floors So the astronomy. But some of the floors are actually made of what's called terrazzo. Now this is like a lime cement, and this is outrageous. You have to heat it up to like 850 degrees, just to kind of get it hot to create this lime cement called terrazzo. And they thought the Romans invented that. That was, because they're pretty smart, the Romans. But now they found it going back to 9,000, or even actually older than that. Older sites have terrazzo as well. So some of the floors are flattened limestone carved out of the solid rock, and other floors, some of the other areas are actually like made of this kind of very waterproof cement called terrazzo. And so that's insane. So they were doing that, and they were making it waterproof, which is interesting.
It is.
And like you see on here, you can actually see the curb around the edge, and so they could have had water in here, and it would have stayed in there. It wouldn't have drained away unless they chose to drain it away through certain holes that they created. So that's another interesting element of these sites.
Is there controversy right now about Turkey holding up excavation? I've heard that.
There has been some controversy. There's a gentleman called Jimmy Corsetti of Bright Insight. I know him quite well, actually. I've been assisting him with some of his research. He looked into this because they slowed down excavation there dramatically. But then we realized they were building infrastructure. They got funding from the WEF, which is a bit dodgy in my opinion.
It is.
And they are focused on building a whole tourism thing there as well. So it's an investment project as well. They've got to monetize it and make it work for them, because it costs a lot to excavate these sites. It's not a cheap process. And when they see how much there is to do now, my God, it's outrageous amount you actually got to do. So technically they have slowed down the excavation, and because they were doing all these other things, and now they're going to restart the excavations this year and get back into it. They've cleared away the olive trees, which were damaging the ruins, potentially. This is something that Jimmy Corsetti campaigned against, and potentially he may have even changed their mind on it, because he's full on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Jimmy didn't make a lot of friends there.
No, you don't make a lot. Yeah, he went out there though and got to see and filmed everything and got access to stuff, and that was. It was cool.
Outrageous. His video was outrageous.
It is. Yeah, him and give a shout out to Mike Collins of Wandering Wolf as well, because he also was there and he did a lot of the research with him, and they kind of looked at all this and they've actually now moved the olive trees, and so whether Jimmy made that happen or whether it was their long-term plan is still. People are a bit unclear about, but it happened. So it's a win either way.
Sure.
Yeah, and so now they've got no excuse not to get down there now and start doing some excavation. And they've now announced they will be doing some. And so whether that's due to the pressure or whether it's just something they had in mind anyway, I think there was a lot of the archaeologists were responding to the pressure, and so I think they may have caused some changes there. So it's great, the stuff's happening, and I can't wait to see what else is going on there. I mean, because when you consider how little has been excavated, and what it has been excavated is mind-blowing already.
It really is.
So what else are they going to find?
So if they can't go deeper because the bedrock is it just going to keep getting wider? Is this a whole complex?
Yeah. And this is it. I mean,
what was it used for?
Let's jump back to this.
Okay.
This is how big it is. I mean, you look at the bottom right there. That's what's kind of being excavated. So we have these enclosures. You've got enclosure D at the top. On the right there, you've got enclosure C, which is like a double enclosure. It's like a double stone circle. And all the other ones, this whole scanned area, are places they've only just started excavating. And so there's a lot more to find. And they're now finding outside of this as well, because they found, when this was all being built, this was probably like a series of stone circles, no one living up there. And then over time, over a few hundred years, people were turning up there going, whoa, whoever built this I want to be around this. This is where to be. And they built this settlement around it. And so there's all these structures built up around it. So it's like a village, like a small town.
Have they found evidence of dwellings, cooking?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
They're now saying that. This is one of the things that there's a big debate for many years, but now, like I said, it seems like initially there was no one really there. They were coming in from Chandler. This is where all you have a water source there, you have rivers and springs there, you have caves there. People are also, living in as well. That's only half a day's walk. It's only a few miles away. You get there in half a day and back in the same day, to Gobekli Tepe. So it's not too far. And then I think eventually they got tired of going back and forth, and they started building these smaller square structures, which you see are kind of around the edge. And they're the ones that actually collapsed in later. But even they had T-pillars inside them, which is odd. And so are they really domestic? Are they actually, were people actually living there? One of the theories that we're developing and kind of looking at as a possibility is that there's all these sites now. I mean, we can actually look at it if we jump back to, I need to go back to the first one, just to show you, just to give you an extent of what is going on here. This is it. These are all some of the sites that are being excavated. So it's called Tepeler. I call it the Tepeler super civilization. That's my kind of term I use.
I love it.
And there's 12 sites potentially, but there's many more. There could be 38, there could be 100. These are the two numbers we've heard. And so I don't know if people lived at one site. I think they may have traveled around the different sites through the year, and they built abodes that anyone could stay in at different times. And it was a kind of like carrying on from the hunter-gatherer tradition where you would move around to different sites, because they know they were doing that before this, earlier than the Gobekli Tepe, in the Levant.
Right.
There were Natufian sites down there going back to 14,000, 15,000 years ago. And they didn't have permanent settlements, but they built places and then would move to another place for hunting grounds and migrations and plants they were collecting, and then make their way back over the year. So it could have been a pilgrimage route between these different sites, because you have exactly the same symbolism, T-shaped pillars, style, statues, even burials now they're finding, all are the same style. And it's almost like the builders of Gobekli Tepe, the first sites that were put there, everything then was duplicated. Nothing changed. It was almost like they came in perfect. Nothing changed. It's strange. It's like you think there'd be a development of different styles and other such things, but the style maintained itself.
Yeah, it's almost like a TGI Fridays. They just build it like prefab.
Yeah.
Like it's the same.
Yeah, it's almost like a franchise.
It's like a franchise.
That's what it feels like. I mean, it's very bizarre, because a lot of these sites, you can actually, we did some analysis of this. If you stand at the top of one site, because they're often up on top, quite high places, and not all of them, but some of them, you can see the peak of the other hill in the distance, and then to another place. So it's almost like they were aware of each other going across the entire landscape as well, which could have been astronomical. They could have been sighting themselves astronomically. They could have been lighting beacons at certain times of year, so everyone could see each other. We don't know, but it's really, really intriguing when you realize it's not just one site, Gobekli Tepe, which has been 5% excavated. All these sites, and a lot of them are now being excavated. Karahan Tepe has got a lot of excavation being done. Sefer Tepe, you've got a few other sites like Sayburch and others. Mm-hmm. But why so many sites? I mean, this is why I believe this was the world's first civilization, or what I call a super civilization, because the elements of civilization were different back then. They didn't necessarily have writing as we know it. They may not have had certain things you class as civilization, but they had other things going on, ritualistic elements, the geometry, the metrology, astronomy, which were highly advanced, especially for this time.
Sure. I mean, I know there's not a lot of writing, but the metrology and the astronomy speaks to engineering, that there's intentional engineering happening at these sites. So clearly they had to communicate, they had to pass this information down somehow. Are we finding any of that? Like, here's how to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finding, that's what I'm writing about at the moment, actually. I'm finding, there are connections that are being made in other parts of the world now. Is this what you mean? Going across other areas? Right,
like if you look at the EdFu text and stuff, it's like, here's how we built this.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, there's very little information. One of the clues about how they built stuff is the quarries. What we're finding there a lot is, like at Gobekli Tepe and at Karahan Tepe, there's an area they kind of leave. They leave a half-finished T-shaped pillar, actually in situ, which is really, really interesting. I mean, I'm not sure if I've got an image of it here, but that really intrigues me, because if you've got that going on, then that suggests that, I don't think I've got an image actually, but that suggests that, no, I don't have one right there, sorry. But that shows you that they were leaving certain things at the site or near the site to say, hey, this is how we did it.
Right.
This is where we got the stone from. This is the birthplace of this temple you're looking at. This is like really important. I've actually written a few articles about that, because you have that with like Aswan Quarry, biggest obelisk in the whole area of Egypt, was left in the quarry half finished. You get it on Easter Island, the biggest Moai statue is still in the quarry half finished. You get it at Baalbek, the biggest stones there, 1,650 tons, still in the quarry, unfinished.
Right.
Same with Gobekli Tepe, same with Karahan Tepe. And so there's like almost like a tradition of you leave the biggest stone or evidence of how they did it in the quarry as a little kind of mark saying, this is where this came from.
Like a maker's mark.
Yeah, this is like, it's almost a Masonic thing. You
Right.
you could see it like that because Masons do that as well, apparently. There's places in Bible lands that have all this kind of tradition as well, when you look at some of the quarries there. And I find that really intriguing. And so, but also you've got to remember, they're mainly built with limestone as well. So it's relatively, it's still impossible for me or you to do it probably, but they were building with limestone. You could cut it. You could cut it with the tools they had relatively easily. But when you get into the intricate stylings of everything, it's like, oh my God. I mean, how did they come up with this? But where's the legacy of that? It's almost like it emerged, it blasted out of nowhere, right at the end of the last ice age, just after the Younger Dryas, and boom, here we go. It's almost like, but we've now, what we're doing for mine and JJ's book, it's JJ Ainsworth, my partner or my co-author I'm working with, we're looking at the kind of lead up to that, where it all came from.
That's where the big questions are.
How it all came to be. And people aren't going to like what we say. I mean, because we're not super out there, you know, we're not super controversial. I really believe these hunter-gatherers were a different class of people that people don't realize. There were elite groups within these hunter-gatherers that are often not talked about, but they were the ones who had this high level of knowledge, and it was passed down generationally, and they were super advanced, and they were also, I think they were taking various substances. You could say psychedelics.
We're going to get into that. And I think in one of your books, don't you talk about secret societies back then?
Yeah. And I've written about that in a couple of articles that I've written, because you look into hunter-gatherer societies, you go back far enough, even into the Paleolithic times. I might have an image of that as well. There's a couple of images that you can actually find evidence going way, way back of these kind of societies going back to the Paleolithic era, which suggest that they were very advanced back then.
Oh yeah, the hatch marks.
This is Alexander Marshak, and this is like counting. This is like numerology. This is astronomy, counting the moons and things like this. And there's certain things they were doing way back in Paleolithic Europe, going back 40,000 years, some of these places, suggesting that they had advanced understanding of astronomy and the solstices, you know, which is where we get to Karahan Tepe. Eventually we're going to look at that. And they seem to be obsessed by it. There was this thing that they were actually aligning many of their caves. Let me just find the right one here. They were aligned, you even see it at Karahan Tepe itself, actually. This is actually the top of Karahan Tepe. They have all these etchings at the top of the hill. You're not allowed to go up there anymore. And below at Sefer Tepe as well, you find these etchings very similar to the Paleolithic etchings. So you see this lineage of information coming from the Paleolithic Europe. And they traditionally had, hunter-gatherer groups traditionally have secret societies as their kind of leaders, their ritual adept leaders, who were like, there were different groups within different hierarchical societies. And this goes back tens of thousands of years. People don't realize this. They weren't just randomly going around hunting and gathering. They were organized. They planned things. They chose specific caves that were aligned so the entrances would have light coming through on the summer solstice morning or the winter solstice sunset or something like this.
Which would take generations just to observe that pattern.
Exactly. And this is actually Lascaux, for instance. We actually
ask you about
this is the most famous cave, for example, in France, you know, in the Dordogne Valley of France. I managed to, luckily went here this summer. I had a family holiday, which turned into a full-on exploration, much to the disdain of my family. But that's what happened. And this one is aligned to summer solstice sunset. Now, they're not aligned. It wasn't built like that, but they chose their caves and entrances and put their paintings in specific spots where it would illuminate only on the solstices at that time of year. And there was a lot of research done on this, and they found that a majority of the caves there, not only did they align to the solstices, they were chosen because they had this passageway that would illuminate the whole passageway on that particular time of the year, but also paintings were put in spots where they would get illuminated, or carvings were placed there. And so much so that this analysis was done by these amazing French researchers. And they found that this is all scientifically analyzed. This was all published in academic papers. And they found that more often than not, there's no way this could be chance. You have the winter solstice mainly, plus the summer solstice and the equinoxes, aligned caves and illuminations taking place. I mean, this is actually a map of all the different caves, where they were and how they're aligned. And that really blew my mind, because this knowledge was going on potentially 40,000 years ago, right up until the time of Gobekli Tepe. And then now we're finding it there. Very similar ideas, very similar principles. And so you can see that there's a legacy of knowledge going back into the Paleolithic Europe era, but also there were much older cultures in different areas coming down from the Russian steppes, coming up from the Levant, even in Egypt, the Natufians and other such peoples, who had different types of knowledge. Like the Natufians, for instance, they understood geometry. They even understood standard units of measure and construction techniques and building into the bedrock and things like this, which they weren't supposed to know about 14,000 to 15,000 years ago. So they were smart people as well. And they were like starting to kind of have settlements, but not. They were kind of moving around, as I said earlier, like pilgrimage routes, following the different migrations of animals, but choosing sites in specific areas where they could take measurements of the sky. They could they would build in a certain manner, align and orient things in a certain way, so it would kind of continue their traditions. And that really blew my mind. When you start looking earlier than Gobekli Tepe, you find all these elements in place. And there's actually a very Natufian site right near Gobekli Tepe. This is what we mentioned earlier, Çakmak Tepe. That again, it's got Natufian stylings to it, because it's got like holes around the edge where wooden poles could have had roof supports, like the Natufians used to do. Right. So you get things like this going on. So yeah, the more you get into it, the more you dig into the kind of academic papers, there's nuggets of information in there, which kind of a lot of people haven't heard about.
Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about Karahan Tepe, Solstice 2021, where you almost got yourself into some trouble. Be right back. So before we jump into Karahan Tepe and your almost arrest by the Turkish government, I wanted your quick take on Derinkuyu, the underground cities of Cappadocia. Who built those? How long? What were they used for?
They're very interesting. Yeah, the underground cities of Turkey are amazing, really. Yeah, the most famous one, as you said, Derinkuyu. This is in the whole Cappadocia area. It goes multiple levels down. They've got these huge rooms, all these different floors. It's quite intricate, actually, some of it. That's one of many, though. There's like 200, at least, of that size.
20,000 people got in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's at least 200. There could be hundreds more. They're finding them now, not too far from Gobekli Tepe. This is what's in a town called Midyat. It's kind of in between Gobekli Tepe and the Tigris area, where you get like Kortik Tepe and Boncuklu Tali, these other sites which are a bit older than Gobekli Tepe. They're finding them there. They're finding them now in Konya as well, where you have Çatalhöyük nearby, which is a 7,500-year-old site. But these underground cities are officially only a couple of thousand, 3,000 max years old. Some of them are attributed to the Hittites. Mm-hmm. Some are attributed to the Byzantine people, even the Christian era. But at Derinkuyu itself, when you go and investigate them, you can actually see the first couple of levels are more intricately carved than the lower ones, because the lower ones are later. As they dig down, it's later in time. The first ones they carved out, and they're more intricately done. There's a different quality to them. You can see that they've done it all with like natural tools, but when you get a bit lower, you start to see metal tools that have carved them out. Right. So the first layers could be super ancient. And one of the primary investigators there many, many years ago tried to work out where all the stone went. Where did it all go? Where did it end up? And he found a riverbed where he found loads of the limestone had been chucked in there, the rubble, the kind of dust and everything else, and found Paleolithic tools in there. Wow. And Mesolithic tools. So we're talking like, and he thinks they could be really old, going into the Ice Age. So that's what's so interesting about them. And also that it could be with this whole kind of cataclysm event, the whole Younger Dryas and all this, which was, Gobekli Tepe was built within a couple of hundred years at the end of that kind of whole drama. That could these have been places where people were hiding out when major cataclysms were taking place up on the surface, which were known to have been happening in that part of the world? I mean, so I think there's something in both of those ideas. I mean, this is all this discussion at the moment. No one's really sure. But the fact that some of them are now being found closer and closer to the whole Tepeler super civilization, area, I think they're gonna find correlations between them, especially now, because what we're going to look at shortly is Karahan Tepe. They're digging into the ground. There's subterranean elements, even in Tepeler itself, and so they were building into the ground right there at some of the sites. We, in fact, even discovered a tunnel there at one of the sites that we're not allowed to kind of talk about too much, but we made a video but didn't give the location away.
An artificial tunnel?
Yeah, we're talking 100 meters, so what, 200 or 300 feet dug into the ground.
I never heard that.
It's solid rock.
For what purpose?
No one knows.
Oh.
They say it's a well, but when we looked at it, it was like, whoa, hang on a sec, what on earth is this? And so that's actually at a site they're starting to excavate as well. So they're going to probably find it anyway. But we got to know the locals and the family. And it's very similar to like Derinkuyu. It's very similar to that idea of underground elements being constructed at these sites. And so there is actually a connection now between Tepeler and the underground cities.
The underground fascinate me because of the intentionality of them. How the giant stones are there for protection, bringing fresh water up, bringing fresh air down.
Yeah.
Animal husbandry happening in lower levels. It's very intricate.
Yeah, and you have them rolling doors.
Yes.
Like the big circular doors.
Yes.
Yeah? And so they would roll them back and forth into place. They're like giant stone discs. Now, some of those are being found in caves in Shanlurfa, right in the center of the whole area of Tepeler. And so there's actually caves there. They're quite famous. They're all along where the river used to run in Shanlurfa. There's actually a couple of caves there that have these circular discs. And I'm like, hang on a sec. Could these then be as old as Gobekli Tepe? Is this where the people were living? And is it the same ideas were then transported to different parts of Turkey as well? And so, yeah, there's a lot more going on than people realize in that area.
How many people were living there at the time?
In Shanlurfa?
In this whole area, I mean, these are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
I mean, when it comes, right, this is what's one of the big debates about the whole Tepeler region, because Shanlurfa itself had not only a river running through it, a very strong river, there was a super lush area. It had all these caves where people were living in just above the river. It had springs. So there's 4 sacred springs that now feed what are known as the pools of Abraham, where all the sacred carp are. You have the cave of Abraham as well, where he was said to have been born, which is all carved out in a weird way, and there's all the water in it. And it makes you wonder if all these kind of biblical sites in Shanlurfa were actually adapted from the whole Tepeler region. And because there was actually a site in Shanlurfa itself called Yemenahale. This is where the Earth of Man statue was found, or the Beliklagol statue. And that's got obsidian eyes, no mouth. It's kind of in this sort of pose with a stump for its legs where it would have been placed in a prominent position.
Yes.
With this phallus kind of out with a V-neck motif or insignia. And so there was a major site in Shanlurfa itself, as well as all the big sites like Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. So it's and I think most of the people were living around Shanlurfa going back 10, 12,000 years. And then they spread out and they started building these outer sites that then became settlements themselves. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on in Shanlurfa city itself.
I like Andrew Collins' theory about how the Garden of Eden could have been a place there.
Yeah.
Could have been an actual place.
Yeah, lots of it lines up. Because this is the ancient city of Edessa.
Yep.
This is where we have, many of the kind of stories of Adam and Eve and things like that kind of emerged from these kind of zones. And there's a lot of debate about that. I mean, Andrew's the expert on all this kind of stuff, but Shanlurfa is a prominent place. People don't realize that. They think it's just the city that's near Gobekli Tepe, but it's not. There's something going on there as well.
Where are you with, are you finding Sumerian iconography, Anunnaki, that sort of thing? Are you finding that at these sites?
Well, what JJ has been looking at, and I think Robert Schock and a couple of other people before were looking at some of the symbolism is very similar to Hittite or kind of similar type of symbolism, but 7,000 years later, which is odd.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories of the Anunnaki, and what Klaus Schmidt actually wrote about this in his book, he wrote about that he believes there's some connection with what's called the Dooku Mound or the Anunnaki. Potentially could have been in and around Gobekli Tepe. Something Andrew's written about, something we're going to be looking at from a different perspective, because we found lots of the myths and the stories could actually be talking about what was going on in the Tepeler region as well. And Karahan Tepe being one of the kind of areas we're focused on, because you have all these kind of fertility myths with Enki and Enlil.
Yep.
And that is, there's lots of fertility symbolism at sites like Karahan Tepe.
Do you subscribe to some of the more, I don't know, fringe is the wrong word, but some of those out there theories about Anunnaki being alien, hybrid programs?
I find that fascinating. I mean, trust me, I've read Zachariah Sitchin's books, but I've also read the books of Christian O'Brien and Barbara Joy O'Brien, The Shining Ones, Genius of the Few.
Yes.
Now, they're more my kind of thing. I mean, because even in them, his translations of the Sumerian text is still pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
And bizarre. And he believes, rather than aliens coming down from the sky, the O'Briens looked at it more like they were kind of spiritual beings, almost semi-divine, who would almost emerge from the ether and then come into form, which is sounds as crazy as aliens does, really. But that was his idea. It's the only way he could really explain it, because that's how it's kind of described. They were kind of semi-divine that became human into form eventually, and then they were creating humans as well.
This sounds a lot like the Book of Enoch as well.
Yeah, it kind of all kind of fits in with all that as well.
Yeah.
It's very odd, when you start looking into it.
Okay, so December 20th, 2021.
Yeah.
Were you incarcerated? Were you in that Turkish prison?
So we're talking about Karahan Tepe now. Let me just bring up, I want to just show people this, because this is what it looked like before it was kind of being excavated. I think we need to kind of see this. This is like I think this was a film I got in 2018 with full permission from the landowners. So this area, the front area there, this is what's all being excavated now. And now,
wow, it looks like nothing.
This is somewhat changed. If we look at it now,
oh my goodness,
this is what it looks like. Look at this. So a huge amount has been excavated, and we're talking, a lot of this has been carved into the bedrock as well. We're not just talking, built on the bedrock. A lot of it has actually been carved out of the bedrock. They were working with the bedrock in a way that no one else had really done before this. And this is an epic shot. Look at this; it's mind blowing. But yeah, so this is an area of the site. This is called the Pit Shrine, or Structure AA, and the other one there with the serpent tail, with all the pillars, that's Structure AB, or the Pillar Shrine. And then you've got the main enclosure it leads into, which is like 70 feet wide, called Structure AD. Now, if you notice on the right there, that's all carved out of bedrock, because it's going up a hill to one side. Whereas all the others, there would have been 18 T-pillars around the edge, 5 of them carved out of bedrock with those benches. And so it's a huge amount of work. They've got kind of carvings, wells and other such things in it. But really what kind of grabbed us was this area here. This is called Structure AB, or the Pillar Shrine. But there's 10 of these pillars. This is all carved out of bedrock, which is unheard of at this time. And then one freestanding pillar, which is almost like the shape of a serpent. And on the back western wall, you've got this head. It's about this big, emerging out, carved again out of the bedrock. It's absolutely insane. When you kind of look at this, it just absolutely blows my mind. So this is what we saw when we turned up on December the 20th, 2021. Myself and JJ, we had this serendipitous series of events, that's a polite way of putting it, where we heard about it all just being exposed. The first time you could visit it was in like September, October 2021. Our friends had been out there, and we were like, Christ, we want to get out there, but we couldn't get out there till December. That was the earliest we could go. And then we heard that they were going to close down the site around Christmas or January, because we have sort of a friend who worked in Istanbul University who kind of give us information, keep us updated quietly. So we got out there for December. Eventually we made it there. And I kind of turned up there on the evening of the 19th. We knew the landowners, because I've been visiting there for 5 or 6 years previously, before it was excavated, as you saw in the aerial shots there. And they gave us permission to go in there and fly my drone, just briefly, so I could get a view of the whole site. And then the military guys who also worked there called Istanbul, because they saw someone flying a drone. and tried to get me in trouble, but I kind of had permission at the same time. But he didn't realize I wasn't supposed to. And then, so anyway, this whole series of problems started. And then I got a call from my friend who owns, the son of the landowner, the guy I flew the drone with, and he said, "Oh, you can't come tomorrow," and we had to go tomorrow because JJ hadn't been there yet, and we want to see the site when it's sunny and everything. Can't come tomorrow because all the officials are turning up, and if you turn up, you're going to get arrested, you're going to get in trouble. And we're like, really? He said, what? I said, what time are they coming? He said, oh, like late morning. I said, well, come early morning. How about that? So, and I said, but he said, no, they might come early morning. I said, we'll come earlier in the morning. We'll come when it's dark. We don't care. So we got there just as the sun was rising, not realizing we were going to see anything. And suddenly we walk up to the site and we see this head illuminated. And we're like, what the hell?
So you didn't plan on a solstice visit. You just happened to...
Well, we were thinking about going there one of the mornings, but didn't know if we were going to discover anything. We checked it all, the maps and everything. We couldn't see anything obvious. But because this happens 10 minutes after sunrise, the alignment's slightly different to what you'd expect. And we saw this head getting illuminated. That really kind of got us. And this is kind of what happens. The sun was shined through that hole, this is all bedrock, remember?
Yeah.
And illuminate the stone head for 45 minutes. And the light would move around the head, and then sort of move around like this, and then go down onto the neck as the light moves around, it goes through that hole, and only that hole. And it becomes, because it's going at a sharp angle, you're actually getting this really thin blade of light.
So if it's bedrock, they had to have planned this well in advance.
This was master astronomer, priestly elites doing this. Was outrageous design to come up with this, and then all the symbolism associated with that as well. And it would go through, the sun would rise up, over in that direction, the southeast. It would go in between the two T-pillars of the main enclosure, sort of right in between them, and then through that hole, and then illuminate the stone head. So that really blew our minds when we saw that. We couldn't quite believe it. And this is like the sequence of how it gets illuminated now in the modern era, because we went back there the following year, we went back there this late last year as well. But back in 9400 BC, the earliest dates they've got for this site, they found, we checked this all out using Stellarium and all these different programs, and worked it all out. The sun would be slightly higher on the head, so it would illuminate it even more perfectly.
Okay.
It's definitely a deliberate design.
So if we're dating this 9400 BC, then the technology has to predate that by thousands of years. Yes.
This is what was developed, I believe, in the Paleolithic era, because they were choosing caves that would align to these solstices. So they had an understanding of it coming into Tepeler before anything was even built there. They must have done, because you don't by chance just come up with this. If we look at this is actually a time lapse. This is fascinating. If you actually look at the head, speed it up, you got it. Actually, this is what happens. So we were very fortunate. We managed to get in there, and it actually gets illuminated. And I've got archaeologists saying, no, it's just pure chance.
Come on,
pure coincidence. And I'm like, man, if this was on like the 18th of April or something, then it might be a bit. Yeah, it could be a weird coincidence. But this is specifically only on the winter solstice, where the sun is in its most southerly position on the horizon before it starts moving north across the horizon towards the equinox and the summer solstice. So it's the only time of the year it reaches that point in the sun and rises that the head gets illuminated. Any other time of year, no light, either light doesn't come through or it goes nowhere near the head. So it has to have been.
It has to have been
designed. And so this is what's so compelling.
And on that day, aren't we seeing events like this all over these ancient sites?
Not particularly.
Really?
Well, you think about it, right? So little has been excavated. And we believe there's something at Gobekli Tepe. We believe there's an alignment there. But it's been so built over, rebuilt, damaged, covered up, and everything else. But I think as these excavations continue, we're going to find more solstice alignments over and over again. I mean, there's a couple of other potential ones. There's enclosure F at Gobekli Tepe. There's possibly one in enclosure D at Gobekli Tepe, which we're pretty convinced by, but none of it has this. Was absolutely, today you can go and you can turn up on the winter solstice, and we did it. This one just gone,
and just watch it.
You can turn and watch it happen, and it's like, what the hell? I mean, to me, this is massive. I mean, not because we discovered it or anything. We whatever. This is a real thing, proving that they were studying very high level solstice orientations and alignments and phenomena in 9,400 BC. That isn't supposed to have been happening back then. It just isn't. It's not supposed to be happening until like Stonehenge, where you get the precise alignments like this. Obviously, the Paleolithic caves are a bit different because they're natural,
right?
And they were choosing places where the light would come in, and then they would paint things, so it would get illuminated or carve things like. But this is a whole different thing, and
this predates Stonehenge by 5,000 years.
6,000 to 7,000.
Oh my goodness! So what do you think was happening at this site? What were they doing?
This is where it gets kind of interesting. We believe that this was a ritualistic site. We believe there's all this fertility symbolism. All these pillars are really phalluses.
Mm-hmm.
You have to.
No, you can see it.
You have to suggest that this is one of the ideas. There's other symbolism there where there's men holding their phallus. There's a large statue which we can look at in a moment. But there's something going on there. These were studying the stars. There's just the star alignments as well that Andrew's looked at, other people have looked at. But really, this is just outrageous. You can't just design, this isn't by chance. I mean, if we look at some of the reconstructions we're actually looking at here, this is my friend Kevin Esslinger. We've been working on putting the site back together to see if any pillars would be in the way, and they're not. We've also put a roof over the top of it because the archaeologists 100% claim there's no evidence for any roofs. There's only a couple of negatives where they think roof beams might have been found. They think they all had roofs on, so there'll be no, they don't look at the sky. There's no astronomy. There's no solstices. It doesn't happen. So we're like, okay, we'll put a roof on it then. So we did. We put a roof on it exactly based on all the pillars are. And there's a perfect gap between two of the outer pillars and the two central pillars.
So it still works
for the light to come through, even with a thatch roof on it as well. This is a traditional Native American roof that Kevin's focused on, looking at different designs. And even if you have to have windows in roofs because it'd be pitch black, if you just put one there in a small area, you get a perfect alignment taking place as well. And so this is, to me, this is like, this
they
is
don't like it.
Yeah, they don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, so even we don't believe there were roofs, but there might have been. And so if evidence turns up, they find wooden beams or they find evidence of actual roofs, then I'd be interested because we could then present this. But the fact is, it works with and without. So this is what was going on there. There was all. This is just a little kind of 3D AI thing we put together from. It's actually from an illustration by Dan Lish. I want to give him credit. It was originally just a kind of pen and ink illustration, but we turned it into this. But we think there was something really interesting going on here because they were obviously developing their astronomical skills. There was ritualistic activity clearly taking place there. They found all sorts of artifacts with bizarre symbolism on.
Like what?
All sorts of things. Like we talk about the leopards.
Yep.
We talk about men holding their phallus. We can look at some of them actually. This is actually the roof they're planning to build, which we'll get into in a little while. Let me just find the right thing because there's some very bizarre. I mean, let's have a look at this one. This is the vulture statue they found in the new enclosure at the top of the hill. This is about 2.5 feet tall, so probably like this.
And the vulture shows up at all these sites, doesn't it?
It does. It's a vulture. Yeah, this is what we get on a pillar 43 at Gobekli Tepe. Right. Again, this is broken like here, and here in 3 places. Like most of the statues are like ritualistically broken. This was found also up in the new enclosure. Again, I've got another look at the pillar shrine there. But let's look at, and also there's evidence that these were full of water as well, which we believe, we mentioned earlier. I think there's water symbolism here is really interesting because if these had water in them, it becomes much more ritualistic. There's things that could have been taking place here.
I think you're right because the walls are so smooth that
it almost looks like it. It's very bizarre when you start looking into it. Yeah, let's have a look at this. This is the work of Kevin Esslinger. We were kind of experimenting to see because they look like pools of water. But there's no natural water here. There's no springs or at Gobekli Tepe. And yet people somehow may have lived here as well. And so we were working out if they could collect rainwater and stay full of water, and they pretty much could. They're very, very well sealed. And also, we have this as well. This is like speculation about what it may have looked like. I mean, it could have just been a spa.
Right.
It could have been a megalithic spa. That was something I would quite appreciate, I'm sure. But here's some of the artifacts and the symbolism which could explain what was going on here, because you've got like this is like this huge, these are perfectly cut stone bowls with these whole kind of donut shaped stones with animals placed within them. as though they're going through that porthole stone that the winter solstice comes through. And so they're having, and then they've got these maces, like these stone maces, you can just about see on the top right image, with all these carvings on them and other such things. So to me, this is a ritualistic burial of some artifacts. This isn't just what they were preparing, like their beef stewing or anything like that. This is something else. I think you can see that here. Some of the other relatively newly discovered statues with 3D reliefs on them. All sorts of symbolism. It's quite broken, Karahan Tepe. So it's quite hard to find anything. This is actually a new room they found at the site. And this, to me, this looks like something Sumerian or Egyptian.
It does.
Utterly bizarre. And so this is brand new. This is like, 25 feet wide, something like that. It's not huge, but it's pretty big. And a lot of the base there is carved out of bedrock. And so this would be water sealed as well. So
and again, looks like a level, polished floor.
It is, yeah. They were really working that bedrock in a profound manner.
Yeah.
Really, really beautifully. And this is one of the statues they found. This, they thought originally was a female statue, but then you can actually see it's got a phallus there as well.
Yeah.
This was found in the large enclosure at the top of the hill. Look at the haircut, though. That's very similar, actually, to what you see on some of the goddess statues in Malta and Gozo.
Right,
well.
Malta Gozo, like Sansuna.
And then this one, the whole Sansuna story really blows my mind. Actually, this is the big statue they found on the right in the new. It's caused a bit of a sensation in late 2023. But notice it's got like almost like a false beard on it.
Yep.
Look at that. And then they found this smaller statue again with this what appears to be a false beard. And what do we find in Egypt? What do we find on the Sphinx?
That's right.
We find these kind of false beards. And so, what on earth is that doing here? And clearly the gentleman on the right, this is 7.5 foot tall. This is a giant, okay? He's holding his phallus. He's got emaciated body, so you see his ribs.
Yep.
He's even got a haircut. It's almost like shaved around here and hair coming down the back, a bit like a mullet, a bit of a kind of mohawk mullet. So they were pretty, and this is very much, when you have shaved heads and things like this, it's usually associated with ritual specialists. This is a traditional kind of, this isn't like a king or warrior. This is like a kind of ritual specialist when you have the shaved cranium.
Like a priest or a shaman or something.
Yeah, and you get that very much.
Could any of these sites been colored, pigment, painted?
There is evidence of that now, yeah. I mean, actually, if we go to this one, this is the boar statue that was found at Gobekli Tepe. This was found in the main enclosure D at Gobekli Tepe. This is huge. It's like a full-size kind of boar statue with fangs and everything else. And in its mouth, they found black, red, and also white pigment on some of the body as well. You see the red pigment in there. So they had black, red, and white. Now, I know that's interesting to you because I think Tim Hogan was speaking about that being the colours of Egypt.
And the colours of the Templars.
Colours of the Templars. Some people say the colours of Atlantis as well.
Yeah.
So they're the
colours of the Y-Files.
They're the three, look at the Y-Files, of course. So they're the three main colours they found at this site. They had found it previously on another boar statue in Enclosure C many years ago and thought nothing of it. But now there's potentially, the whole site might have been painted.
We've got to get Kevin on that.
Yeah.
We'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Because that's spectacular.
That would be interesting, actually, yeah. So that really interests me, the whole idea that they could actually be painted. And the same could be, Karahan Tepe as well. So one of the things they found inside the main enclosure at Karahan Tepe, which I think, could have held sacraments, could have proved its kind of ritual site. Well, these giant plates, these are like this big, some of them. These are carved out, solid stone, polished.
Yep.
And notice the dark one in the middle there, that is like almost like a indentation smoothed out.
It's like, it looks like a beveled restaurant tray.
Yeah, and this is like basalt, this is granite, this is extremely hard. Some of it's diorite, I think.
How could they carve granite?
Exactly. How could they do that? And so this is one of the mysteries that, and they found hundreds of these now. When this was put on display, they only found a handful of them.
Because limestone, yes, you can cut that with obsidian.
But they got very granite? Hard basalt as well. Like almost diorite level. It's really.
Is there volcanic rock in that area?
Yeah. Because you have Krakatoa Mountain. This is like it was once a volcano to the north. This is where the first einkorn wheat was grown on the slopes of, actually, right. Going back to not long after Gobekli Tepe. But they found there's lots of volcanic, but some of this stone is from completely unknown areas. They don't know where it came from. And so this is why the wider super civilization idea could be a reality at places like Karahan Tepe and Gobekli Tepe. But these are just some of the plates. They found these placed specifically on the benches in between the T-pillars around the edge of the main enclosure. But now they're finding them in all the enclosures and placed often in very specific spots, like under the porthole stone, in the kind of almost like altar type areas and things like this.
Do we have a guess why? I mean,
there was something on these plates.
That lip is there for practical reason, to hold something.
There was something on these plates. So I don't think they were serving, cucumber sandwiches or anything like that. I think this was a serious, they were serving sacraments.
Could there have been human sacrifice, blood?
There is some evidence of that at a site called Cheyanu, which is further to the north.
There's evidence of that?
They've found a human hemoglobin, along with animal and human bones all piled up in a place called the Skull Room at Cheyanu, and they think it could have been human sacrificing there as well going on. So that's another interesting place. That's further to the north. It's around 1,000 years after Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe,
because they can date that hemoglobin. Yes.
Yeah, they have done that at these sites, and so but these, I think, I got this feeling that these were what sacraments were carried on. I'm talking about possibly psychotropic plant medicines.
Now, what do you mean?
Well, I'm talking about magic mushrooms. I'm talking about potentially other things that henbei and other things that may have grown in the area, because when you start looking at the whole stylings and design, 3D relief carves, the abstract imagery of Gobekli Tepe and all these sites, it's not a normal human mind is coming up with that. This is outrageously kind of abstract. It doesn't make sense. If you were just a primitive or relatively primitive hunter-gatherer, you wouldn't be building and creating these beautiful relief carvings with this abstract symbolism and design and maintaining that over generations, unless you had a real kind of very unusual mind to put that together. To me, so I think there's something odd going on here.
Does amanita or any of those type of mushrooms grow in the area?
Well, yes, you would get that because they were known to have aurochs and different cattle, and so the dung there it would grow for sure. Right. They found there's quite a lot of mushroom sort of shape symbolism in parts of these sites as well. You can actually find that on many of the different statues. And also there's a type of grass that grows all in that area, which actually has small, it's kind of partly acacia. And so you burn that in high quantities, you're going to get DMT smoke coming out as well.
Interesting.
And also they were brewing beer. There's evidence of calcium oxalate being found on some of the large stone vessels, sort of tubs that they found at Gobekli Tepe so far.
And they're not supposed to have beer yet, are they?
No, they're not. But it would have, I mean, so there's potential evidence. This hasn't been 100% proven that they were brewing beer. Maybe accidentally. It could have just left it to rot and ferment, and they realized, it made them feel a bit funny when they drank it. So that can put you into more like a beer gruel it would be, rather than a beer.
Could ergot grow on that?
Exactly.
It could.
Exactly. This is the point. And so what they found in Rakachet Cave down in Israel, which is older than Gobekli Tepe, is not only evidence of early beer production, we're talking probably accidental beer, but they found evidence of ergot as well.
Wow.
So, and that was usually associated with a skull cult, decapitating skulls, sacrificial kind of stuff as well. And so was that happening at Gobekli Tepe? Because they found skulls there with holes drilled in them. So they could have been strung up. And there's some of the T-pillars have holes carved on the overhanging T part, holes drilled through. So you could have been stringing up skulls and hanging them there. But this idea of psychedelics in ancient times, to me, suddenly it all comes clear. This is like why they were studying all these obscure things, like studying the stars, having these ritualistic practices, this fertility symbolism, all this unusual iconography, which is really hard to decipher, because they were kind of off their heads on really interesting substances. And other cultures throughout history after that were known to be into this kind of stuff.
I mean, if ayahuasca goes back 10,000 years, how many thousands of years did it take to figure out that process?
Yeah, exactly. So it just goes on and on and on. And then they were experimenting to put it in, I think when you're kind of in some kind of altered state, you're going to get into things like geometry.
You're going to see the fractals, all of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is why I'm so fascinated by this. This is why, I mean, the whole of Gobekli Tepe is, all of the sites there are geometrically laid out. And so this one is a very complicated one, actually, which was first, this shape was first discovered by Alexander Thom.
Megalithic yard.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and the stone circles of Britain, all that different geometries.
Can you give us just a quick recap of what Alexander found?
Yeah, for sure. I've actually got a couple of images here. I'll just show you.
This audience knows the megalithic yard.
Yeah, so this is the man. Absolutely love this guy.
Yeah,
absolute legend. So this is Alexander Thom. He was around really. In 1938, he started surveying stone circles. He was a Scottish engineer. He taught at Oxford University. He was fascinated by stone circles and the megalithic sites. So he went round with a theodolite on his own sometimes. Theodor heavy, they should be called. They're giant metal objects. They're really hard to carry about. And surveyed hundreds of stone circles. And he came up with all these, and he found all these geometries, within them, ellipses, perfect circles mainly, but also these very odd flattened eggs and things like this. And that really got him, and so he proved that, not a majority were circular, but a lot of them were these shapes. So he proved that they were using very sophisticated geometry to lay them all out. He also discovered the standard unit of measure called the megalithic yard, which is 2.72 feet or 0.83 meters, which he found over and over again at these sites. And if we go to Gobekli Tepe, this is one of the geometries.
Oh my goodness!
In enclosure C.
Are you finding standard units of measure at these sites?
Oh, we're gonna get into that.
Okay.
Yeah. This is very, very interesting stuff. So this is a perfect flattened circle modified type B. I mean, this doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but enclosure C is got it down. I mean, that's what kind of gets me. Here's some other geometries. Okay, the middle one there is enclosure D, which is an egg-shaped based upon two 5, 12, 13 Pythagorean triangles.
I understand. When I think about that, I think about an orbit.
Yeah.
Because this is like two ellipses merged.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And also on the left there, you've got some other geometries. You've got obviously Karahan on the right there. And so we keep finding these different geometries. And to me, this can't just be accidental.
No.
There's something odd about this. And then when you start looking a little bit more closely, you feel like Nabta Playa in Egypt has the same geometry as Gobekli Tepe. This goes back to 7,500 BC potentially. So what's going on here? And then, there's alignments between them that form geometries.
Nan Madol, fascinating. I see it's connected.
It's all connected. And
what about the henges? Do they fall into the same ellipsis pattern?
Yes, you do get that in England, yeah. So this is what we're developing. I'm actually writing about this as we speak. I'm finding so many correlations between Alexander Thom's work and what we're finding in southeast Turkey. And as more sites get uncovered, more and more of these geometries keep turning up, and it's blowing my mind. So let's look at the metrology for a moment. This is insane.
Let me stop you for 1 second. How the heck is Nan Madol connected to this? That's Polynesia, no?
Well, what I've got here, this is from the little book. So what we did, we started laying out sites around the planet using Google Earth and other such things, and just seeing if there's any interesting alignments between Gobekli Tepe sites, all that Tepeler sites, and others around the world, and there are. It's bizarre ones. I mean, you look at the alignment here from Sayburch to Gobekli Tepe to Tasli Tepe, and it somehow goes through Karahan in Armenia.
It does?
And it goes to reaches Nan Madol, 7,500 miles away. And if that could be a coincidence, okay? Could be a coincidence. I admit that. But then you look at the work on the right there, you got Gobekli Tepe and Baalbek, of a perfect diagonal of a 6-fold square geometry, which is the work of Howard Crowhurst. Mm-hmm. The same on the triangle at the top left there, Gobekli Tepe, Kurt Tepe, and Harbet Zuvan. These are 3 Tepeler sites. All form a perfect 3-4-5 triangle across the landscape. And so we think they were surveying
a 3-4-5, so a Pythagorean triple.
Yeah, all Pythagorean. Most of it's Pythagorean, actually. Yeah, most of it is. And so that's what intrigues me, because that is happening in Britain. We've proven that. Robin Heath, Howard Crowhurst, Alexander Thom, all proven that. So now we're finding it happening here. And then you think about like passages from the Book of Enoch. Oh, and I'm taking chords. The angels are taking chords and going to measure size and shape of the earth. And you realize, hang on a sec, this is what they were actually doing at this time. So even the Book of Enoch could be referring back to this Tepeler era where they were doing this kind of thing.
That's right. To catch people up, Enoch traveling above the earth with Uriel and is shown 364 and 1/4 days around the sun, lunar cycle, solar cycle, all things that they're not supposed to know. And I think Enoch was problematic for the church at some point.
Definitely. Yeah.
Was it James Bruce who discovered it in Ethiopia?
That's right. It's fascinating to me. I mean, the Book of Enoch's almost like a kind of it's the book of Tepeler, in my opinion. I think if people start looking into that more, and as more things get discovered there, they're going to find more and more correlations between these different elements, these different passages, these texts that were written in ancient times. There's going to be more and more connections. And one of the other things, they're talking about going to measure. This is where the ancient metrology gets into it, because all these have got specific distances between them. So this is going to hurt people's brain, but this is some measurements I took of the different parts of Gobekli Tepe. Now, you don't need to look at it too closely, but fundamentally what we're seeing here is not just that we're finding the megalithic yard, whole number as well. It's all about whole numbers. You don't want to have half measures or things like that. It doesn't, right? So I'm just only if I find a whole number. But what I found is that I'm very influenced by the work of John Michel and John Neal, who wrote Ancient Metrology back in 1980, I think, and then John Neal has written a whole series of books about the metrology. And they don't think there's one unit of measure like the megalithic yard. They think there's a whole system of different variations of the foot length, which are based around the British foot, but there's all slight differences between them, and they're all harmonically connected.
Harmonically connected meaning predictable ratios?
I think I've actually got
I'm sorry, I'm getting excited. The math gets me excited.
Well, you look at this, for instance. This is like, this is actually the top of a T-pillar is 2 double squares. This is an interesting way of seeing it. So if you've got a double square, that's the fundamentals of building things like this. So that measures potentially 3 megalithic yards across, but the diagonal would measure 8 Royal Egyptian feet, and the diagonal of the square would measure 16 Sumerian palms or 5 Royal Egyptian feet. And so you have all these weird correlations within one system. So they weren't just using one unit of measure. They were using multiple units. And each one was like a kind of quality, like a different accent of the builders who were doing that part of the site. And they wanted to, it meant something. So it was like a language.
Right.
Yeah. So, this is where the whole idea of number and myth and stories, a lot of it comes from number and measurements. And a lot of these old measurements are subdivisions of the size and shape of the Earth. So they must have had an understanding of the size and shape of the Earth, even in Tepeler. This is what's so intriguing.
So these numbers are divisible by the circumference? Is that something like that?
Various ones are, yeah. Some of them are, yeah. And like, here's a close-up of like enclosure D, for instance.
With all this data, how do you know what to throw away?
Well, this is when you get into anything like, so I've got a few, like the numbers here. I don't want to burn people's brains apart here, but this is the numbers here. We've got a few half measures here, like 13.5, or so I want to just show some examples. But you only, you could put a list of 20 different types of 18 different types of foot measurements, or remnants, or palms and things like this, but they're not exact numbers. They're not 18, or they're not 17, they're not 12, they're point something. So remove anything with a point, okay, and just go with whole numbers. And this is where all the magic starts coming out, because you realize one measurement could be something, another whole number of another measurement, another whole number of another measurement. So you keep finding all these correlations. Then you kind of work downwards until you get to a few different ones they were definitely using, which really are the Persian foot, which is 1.05 feet. Or there's also the megalithic yard is used all the time in Tepeler. You've also got the Sumerian foot. You've got the Assyrian foot, and you've got the Saxon foot, which isn't actually Saxon, it's actually much earlier than that. And this is so bizarre. Let me see, I'm sure I've got the right image here. Now, let me just go back a couple of shots here, because this is, it gets really, really interesting to me. Yeah, let's go back to this one. Because these variations of the foot, they're harmonic fractions different to one another. And so you could actually just, put them in a table. You could actually calculate it in your head, in arithmetic, really easily. You don't need to work it out on calculators, because it's like 11 to 12, or 21 to 22, or 58 to 56. The differences in the slight variations. If you do it just like that in your head, like the ratios, and so it's quite easy to understand. So I think they were using 4 or 5 different measurement systems, and they're all based upon the measurements of the Earth. So again, we go back to the Book of Enoch. They were going to measure, right? And I believe that they were doing that. They were sending teams out around the planet, and they wanted to understand what was going on with the Earth. So the earliest phase of Tepeler, they were doing this. And this is where the Book of Enoch kind of picked up that kind of story.
Right.
They're talking about taking these cords off and going to measure. And so that is where I'm still into this. I'm still writing about this. I'm still going further into this, but the evidence is there now. I mean,
well, what evidence? Are you finding artifacts of people?
Just the numbers. You can just work with the numbers. This is what's so interesting. So this is something that the archaeologists have zero interest in. I couldn't even get officially any of the measurements of the site. I had to go in and use every old map I could find and work it all out. So some of these may be a tiny bit off. I'm still working on this. But when you find numbers, you find geometries, you find orientations. They even mark north, south, east, and west accurately as well.
They do?
Using modular geometry, which is the work of Howard Crowhurst. So the modular geometry is like on the right there, where you have squares placed upon each other, but always north, south, east, west.
Do we see any of these measurements used by the Olmecs, the Aztecs, Incas, anything on that side of the earth?
I haven't looked at that yet. I'm so focused on this in the British sites as well. But like on the image on the right there, you see you've got there was some research done by these researchers from Tel Aviv University, Avi Gopher, I think, and Gil Hackley, and they found if you draw a point in the middle of each of the main enclosures, it forms a perfect equilateral triangle. So, and they're the same measurements on each side. So they were working with equilateral triangles at least. So that's what they realized. But then Howard Crowhurst came in and realized that alignment, the yellow line between the two central T-pillars of two of the enclosures, is actually a triple square diagonal.
Oh my goodness.
And so this is where, and suddenly, so if that's the case, then you draw other squares around that. They knew north, south, east, and west. They weren't supposed to know that then.
Right.
That wasn't supposed to happen until the Pyramid Age, that kind of thing with the Great Pyramid. So little things like that. You don't take. Most people take for granted. They think, so what? But they must have known.
How close is it? I mean, we know
this is exact. It's
exact.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. And so this is what's it gets weirder and weirder the more you start looking into it. And so this is, I'm at the kind of halfway point, maybe 2/3 into this mega chapter I'm doing on this for the new book. But I think it's going to turn out, if we can get some exact measurements out of some of these sites, get permission to go in and actually measure them, we're going to go crazy. But then you have other sites in the whole region. Obviously, this is fascinating to me because you have double square, again, the modular geometry base, hiding measurements. There was actually an old quote, I can't remember the quote exactly, from John Michel. He was like my kind of hero. He wrote the book The View Over Atlantis and also Ancient Metrology. He wrote the book Megalithomania.
He
gave us permission to use the name for our conference, yeah, funnily enough. And what he found was, he says, it's always, like at Stonehenge, he said it's always the top stones, the lintels, that will hide the measurement systems of the priestly elites. It's not the lower ones, because they'll all get damaged and knocked around. You look at the top stones. So this double square is the top part of the T of the T pillars. So he was right, and he was saying that 20, 30 years ago. And now we're finding that at Gobekli Tepe, the top part of the site is where the magic is, where the real measurements and their kind of knowledge is positioned. And so this is interesting to me. If these measurements are encoded inside on the T pillars themselves, then we can work out what they were trying to tell us.
That's right.
Mathematically, at least.
Yes. So if the T pillars if they leave one in the quarry, then this looks like engineering being passed down. Yes.
This is very much. This is science.
Yes.
This is a very early science.
And the planning is extraordinary. The advanced planning.
It is, and I think there's a subtlety to it as well, and the abstract nature, which makes them feel just so intelligent. These people.
Yes.
So intelligent, but in a kind of in a different way to us. We think intelligence is all academic. To them, it was a subtle intelligence, understanding the laws of nature, coming in and encoding that within these sites.
Why would the solstices be so important to people that aren't really agricultural yet?
Well, this goes way back, actually. This goes back to the Paleolithic era, actually. Let me just, there's a couple of things here. So we're talking about some of these caves again. So So we go back to this. This is all the alignments of the solstices, in the Paleolithic caves.
Yeah.
And the traditions there, and this is anthropological research, which has been done on hunter-gatherer societies. There's a gentleman called Brian Hayden, an author, brilliant author. He's written about this. This is based on some of his research. And I've been reading all his stuff. I just found him, basically, and it's blown my mind that solstices weren't necessarily about anything to do with growing food or to study, having a calendar. It wasn't necessarily about food production and things like that. It was more about understanding the laws of nature, but also it was about when to do your, tribal feasting, when to time your initiations, the rites of passage, when to, have ceremony and things like this. It wasn't just about practical things. It was like spiritual, ritualistic things as well. And the way they worked that out is because he studied hunter-gatherer societies from all over the world that anthropological data has been picked up from over the last few hundred years, and found that was the case. Many of them, a majority of them, in fact, even in North America as well, the Native American groups here, they do the same thing. They have caves, or they have orientations which get illuminated on certain dates of the year, usually the solstices. Then they know when to do ceremonies, they know when to do their feasting, they know when to do certain things. And only later it became useful for agriculture.
Right.
So it's the other way around. People, this is the
That's
whole
a great
thing.
point.
And so, because you look at Karahan Tepe, you have the whole winter solstice alignment there. That would have been a really useful calendar, a really useful marker.
That everyone can use and understand. The sun stops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's actually some work of Dr. Martin Sweatman, who I have a lot of time for. I'm just seeing if I've got an image of some of his research. I can't find it. But he, actually, I think he's got it on Gobekli Tepe, Pillar 43 as well.
He's been published, yes?
Oh, yeah, he's an academic, yeah, he's for sure. So he's done, not only at Karahan Tepe, he's found a calendrical system in the Pillar Shrine, counting the different, pillars and things like this. He's also found it on Pillar 43 here. A perfect kind of luni-solar calendar, they call it.
This is the vulture stone. So what's happening here?
This is the vulture stone. So he's basically counting the different V's. So, and then but it's not that complicated, but it's kind of explained here. You got the one lunar month is one of the V's, 11 lunar months, because there's 11 of these squares, equals 354 days, and you got 10 more of these upside down and upright triangles, which equal 10 days, which makes 364 days. Then he believes the vulture or the sun symbol would make up, he believes it was the summer solstice, but it could easily be the winter solstice as well. Mark made the final day. So it's a basic counting thing for a lunar and solar calendar. And the same thing's been found at Karahan Tepe. And you must remember that within a couple of hundred years of these sites being built, on Karakadar Mountain, just north of Gobekli Tepe, the first einkorn wheat was produced in an agricultural farming manner. And that's where the agricultural revolution kicked off, within 200 years of these sites being constructed. And then, because all the evidence at Gobekli Tepe and Karahan is that they're talking about, all the evidence they found, there were wild plants, there were wild animals, there was hunting, there was collecting, they were doing all these things, but there was no evidence of growing food or agriculture. But within a couple of hundred years, they probably got to a point where they wanted to settle down and they kind of wanted to hang out at Gobekli Tepe and these other places. And then they thought, well, let's grow the damn stuff ourselves, just over there. They built all these, they created all these huge hunting traps. So when migrating animals were coming, they coerced them into these giant, all these walls built around them in big kind of keyhole shapes to then trap them and funnel the animals into these pens and then kill them all.
This is during the same time?
All around the area, you find loads of these hunting traps. They're called hunting kites, I think. And some of them have been found in Saudi Arabia and other areas as well. And so they were realizing they could stop. And then they started breeding the animals and things like this. And then they started growing the food. So this is when this sedentary lifestyle began.
Right.
After these sites were built. Because most, for a long time, people were thinking, oh, they must have kind of created agriculture and then decided to build these sites based upon that.
Well, that's what we're taught.
Yeah. But also you have some of the Sumerian stories of Enki and Enlil and all this kind of stuff. They talk about giant structures being created. They talk about giant lofty enclosures and things like this being built on hills, and there were channels and water was being directed. And you see all these water channels at Gobekli Tepe now, where they're harvesting rainwater, and at Karahan Tepe, which we've seen already. And then after that, the food domestication, the animal domestication started taking place. These are all in the Sumerian stories. And so I believe they would, Andrew talked about this briefly as well. They were going on about this in Sumerian stories, but they were talking about the Tepeler era in kind of myth and story. And so I think there's a lot more to what was going on here than people realize. We take, you got to remember, until the mid-1990s or 2000, no one knew any of these places existed.
Nope.
They were just a rumor. And
Right.
you think about all the cultures passing through southeast Turkey. You got the Sumerians, you got the Hittites, you got the Assyrians, you got the Babylonians, you got the Christians, you got the Muslims. All these cultures walking over the side. Literally, they're like digging into the same hill and putting burials in, like at Gobekli Tepe, and seeing it as sacred somehow. They sort of felt it was sacred, probably because of the myths that had been around for a long time. So no one knew anything about it. And so all this kind of history is being written about, but there's a whole chapter missing. The chapter is now being read and is being written. And so this is what's happening in southeast Turkey.
It's fat. Before the discoveries, would people look at those Sumerian texts and wonder, where is this place? Where is this? Because they're talking about places.
Well, they assumed it was in, Iraq,
Right.
Iran, all this kind of thing, where it's,
Fertile Crescent.
all kicking off now. But there's a lot of, there's a lot going on down there as well, long before the Sumerians. Like you have Jericho, for instance. This is famous. Everyone knows Jericho.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a summer solstice sunset alignment
In Jericho?
in Jericho, in the tower itself.
This is the oldest city on Earth, yes?
Yeah, this is like, a bit younger than Gobekli Tepe and all that. But this is the work, again, Rambakai and Roy Liren. These are the guys who have found standard units of measure at other Tepeler sites and in Tufian sites. This is a whole different thing to what they're finding in Gobekli Tepe. But they're finding the Persian foot and Persian cubit as a standard unit of measure in many of the Tufian sites. But that's another story. But this is the alignment in Jericho. So all these stories may have been reflecting into Jericho. They may have been reflecting further north into Gobekli Tepe. And also, we'll come back to that in a moment. But also you have all along the coast, you have sites like Atlit Yam that are being discovered off the coast, under the water of Israel. And they found semi-stone circles, cut marks, stone wall corridors that align to the summer solstice. So that's all in the area, of that whole kind of biblical area. So it gets weirder and weirder the more you dig.
Do you date it to the same time? And why is it underwater?
This goes back to about 7,500 BC. It's underwater because of the water levels have just risen 400 feet.
I was trying to get a flood myth story.
Yeah, no, well, yeah. I mean, there are certain ones that kind of come into that as well, but there's a lot around the coast there that suggest, especially the Levantine coast, Israel, and that, and which do suggest that there was a lot more going on, and it must be this old because that's when the water levels were much less at the end of the last ice age, and a little bit after that as well. But you also have the connection with Malta, which I find interesting because that whole place was much bigger and connected to the mainland Europe in the Mediterranean.
That's
as well.
right.
And and they found evidence off the coast of Sicily of a gigantic, 14 meter long megalith at the bottom of the ocean, which dates back to 10,000, 11,000 years ago. And they're like, what the hell? So there's stuff going on there as well, all under the water. So yeah, the more you get into this, the coastal stuff is a whole other thing as well. But there's also evidence that they were navigating from Mediterranean edge of Turkey over to Cyprus, going back to at least 12 to 13,000 years ago. And we're talking quite large amounts of people going back and forth, quite big boats.
So trade, merchants?
Yeah, and people, animals. They proved it by animals.
Oh,
That's
how do they do that?
And obsidian and things like this. Well, no one knows what's going on here because they found evidence of seafaring going back 100,000 years in Crete and Greece because they found obsidian on certain islands that could only have got there by boat, things like that. So the seafaring nature of history has been deeply overlooked.
I
the
agree.
whole diffusionism thing as well.
I agree.
And so even the people of Gobekli Tepe may have been sailing, and this is how they could have got around the world to measure the Earth in ancient times.
I mean, there's no denying the DNA is around the planet that's coming from different places. Diffusionism is a real thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's more evidence of that is going to come to light the more we get into this kind of stuff. But there's so much. I mean, I want to talk about a couple of other sites because I've got a feeling some of your watchers and your listeners watches.
Nice. Well, let's take a quick break and we'll get back into this. I'm very excited. We'll be back in a sec. I wanted to ask, have you found any correlation with latitude, longitude with these sites? Is there any meaning?
That I'm starting to look at that now. I've got most of the geometry work done. I think we're going to find things. Yeah, I think we're going to find it. Well, the problem is it's a very limited area, the whole Tepeler area. I mean, there is one thing I found, like there's a connection between Peru and Gobekli Tepe.
Interesting.
If you draw a line, like for instance, that's too high now. If you draw a line, say between the middle of Gobekli Tepe enclosure D and the Coricancha in Peru, it's I should have an image of it here somewhere. I don't know if
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So.
And the line is from the middle of the enclosure. That's pretty precise.
It's pretty accurate. Yeah. Let me just see if I hope I got the image here. If not, oh, here you go. Yeah, he's here. So.
Wow.
So this isn't necessarily about latitudes, but this is quite interesting because it comes back to the canonical numbers. So this is years ago. I kind of spotted this when I was messing about on Google Earth. But if you draw an exact line between the middle of enclosure D and the middle of the Coricancha, which is the sacred center of the Inca, pre-Inca, whatever, this is 7,928 miles. That is the known diameter of the Earth at the equator. But in canonical tradition, it's 7,920 miles. That's a sort of round number. And that's 8 times 9 times 10 times 11. So this is all the arithmetic that the ancients were doing. So there has to, I mean, how can they do, I mean, is that a coincidence again?
I don't think so. I mean, the number 11 shows up a lot in these ancient sites as well.
Yeah, you do. Actually, some of the enclosures have 11 stones in as well. Usually 12, but 11 as well. But, and also some of the carvings here as well. I wrote this article on Graham Hancock's website years ago. Yeah. Like the ones on the left there of that photo, they're from Cotimbo and Silistani in Peru. The two on the right are from Gobekli Tepe. And they're almost identical style. I mean, this is a style you're probably going to find. People are going to do 3D reliefs. But it's kind of interesting. Even Graham Hancock put that in his book, when he went to visit these sites as well. He found he compared with these sites, not necessarily this alignment, but certainly, the connection can be found.
Yep, I see it. I believe it.
Let's look at a couple of other bits while we're here then, if you're interested in a bit of that. I mean, obviously, you've got the Gobekli Tepe Easter Island thing as well. It's kind of intriguing. You're getting the same kind of hand signals. You're getting the same kind of style.
Easter Island has always confused me because it's in the middle of nowhere.
I know, yeah. I know. It's such a strange place. You even have polygonal walls there as well.
Is that right?
In a place called Vinapu, underneath, like where the Moai stand upon the platforms. And, how did that get there? Did that come from Peru? Did it come from another part of the world?
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realize the Moai statues, a lot of them have bodies.
Oh, yeah, all the way down, yeah. I mean,
why would you build a 30-foot statue and bury 20 feet of it?
That's one of the things you get on the island there. Some of them are just sort of torsos, but some of them go much further down, like below the kind of groinal area. But you always have this hands on the navel, and the navel is like, traditionally it's like the navel of the world, Easter Island. Traditionally, Gobekli Tepe means navel or potbelly hill.
Oh,
it's the same name.
Okay,
very, very odd. And then you have the navel is also the Coricancha, or the center of the Inca tradition. It was known as the navel as well. So you have all these different navels, something that comes up over and over again. Now this is an image from the book. Obviously this is hand drawn, kind of stuff we were playing with. And you're interested in like different latitudes and distances and things like this. Now this is like a bit weird because we have some distances between sites are bizarre. Like, for example, the distance between Stonehenge and Gobekli Tepe is exactly 1 million Persian feet.
Exactly 1 million?
Yes, it's so weird. And I don't know what to make of that. But what we know is that Stonehenge, the exact location of Stonehenge, there used to be a mound at the center, which was part of a system of studying the solstices 10,000 years ago, which we can have a look at in a minute perhaps. But what is bizarre though is that the Persian foot, which is 1.05 feet, is found throughout Gobekli Tepe, is found in Stonehenge, known as the British Longfoot, and also the mile, the standard English mile, is 5,000 Persian feet.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah. And so it just gets weirder and weirder. And then you can sort of find all these other correlations. Like, for example, Delphi, also a naval site,
right,
center of the world, is exactly 900 miles, which is exactly 5 million Samian feet. It's another one of the foot kind of variations.
Not 5 million and one.
No. Just happens to be. Oh, it could be. I mean, it depends where.
Right.
Yeah. But it's just little intricacies like this. I find kind of bizarre. We've got other ones here. We've got symbolism from Australia on Aboriginal elders being found at Gobekli Tepe. Something that Andrew discovered years ago, that from Gobekli Tepe to the Great Pyramid is exactly 1,080 kilometers, which is an interesting number because 108 is a lunar number.
Right.
It's also a precessional number, what we find in distances between sites around the world. And you could just go on and on and on. I mean, you keep finding correlations here. And also, actually, Jericho's interesting. It's exactly 2 million Saxon feet away. Now, whether they were counting in millions,
right,
is a whole other story. It's probably based upon certain mile lengths anyway, which the Saxon foot may have been used within, or Samian foot in some cases. So, you can go on and on with this. It's pretty, I cover that in the book, obviously.
I see you have the Baalbek stone there. There's an angle correlation?
There is an interesting angle correlation, actually, yeah. So that's the one where we saw in a slightly earlier image. I'll just sort of find
this is, I think, the biggest quarried stone ever.
Yeah, the largest one they found relatively recently is 1,650 tons. I think I've got some images of Baalbek here. And this is actually it here, yeah. So we have the one on top, which has none of the text on it. That's the stone of the pregnant woman. That's about 1,000 tons. Yeah, just 1,000 tons. That's all. And then the one beneath it, they found to be like 1,650 tons. Hasn't been moved. It's still in position, so they may not have ever got around to moving, or they may have been chopped into smaller areas. But there's other ones in the whole area. We've got references to giants building these. Here's an article I wrote years ago for Atlantis Rising magazine. But this is one of the stones in the temple itself, because there's like a giant platform there. Here's some other stones. You can see me standing down there. These are down the north side.
Any theories on how those big stones got into place?
Giants. That's
okay.
That's the only theory.
I'm on board.
And there's me as well, standing there with this is like the trilithon, the 3 mega stones, which are about 800 tons each. So these are smaller than the ones found in the quarry, but still, my God, I mean, it's a serious operation. You can't really mess with that. But and the alignment, this is something that Howard Crowhurst came up with, which absolutely fascinated me, and we actually included it in the book as well. This is the Gobekli Tepe to Baalbek, the 3-2 square alignment. So this is based upon his system of modular geometry, which is using squares, north, south, east, west, to the left and right of each other. And then you work out what the angles are between 3 to 4, 5 squares. And they're very meaningful angles, very meaningful. And they often relate to solstices, which is where his work is focused on in Brittany and in Britain. But he's now applying it to Tepeler sites as well. We're starting to look at that. We've found golden section angles with the solstice at Karahan Tepe, for instance, which we're going to look at.
Golden's like the golden ratio, like phi?
Yeah, it's really, really odd. And how
about Fibonacci numbers? Did those show up?
As far as I'm aware, not yet, but leave it with us. We're going to keep looking.
I bet they do.
So this is fascinating. So this is the Gobekli Tepe to Baalbek angle, and like the thing about Baalbek as well is that the area it's built upon is an old tell or an old tepe. Yeah. So this could go back thousands and thousands of years anyway. When it was originally a kind of outpost of Gobekli Tepe. No T-pillars or anything, but certainly something was there. It was an occupational mound. That's what they call them. People living in and around that mound. And then there's Phoenician evidence there. There's Roman evidence. But it's claimed that the Romans built the whole thing. But there's no evidence of Romans moving 1,000-ton stones to create a platform to build their temple upon. It's almost like they found it like that and then built upon it. This is more likely. And so, yeah, you can just going to Baalbek was one of the most, my God, it was one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever seen in my life, I think. But there's so many more sites here. Let me just look at some of the sites in Tepe. I think your watchers, listeners, can't call them watchers.
Everything goes back to Enoch.
Yes, appropriating the biblical text there. So this is say birch. Now, we're talking about numbers, we're getting into all the night. So one of the things about the name say birch, which really caught my, I literally worked this out on a bus and a translator when I was in Turkey. And what does say birch mean? And say means counting. Birch means sign of the zodiac, or Berk in Kurdish means tower or watchtower. And we found out this is like one of the main Tepeler sites they're now excavating. We found out that there used to be an old Jericho-like tower at Sayburch that got destroyed in this manner in the Second World War.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's actually hidden in the name. And so this is clearly, this is a scan of the enclosure.
I love these.
This is about 30 feet wide, or thereabouts. 32 feet. In fact, I've actually done some number work on this and found sacred measurements. But if we go on, you can actually see a different view of it here. You can see there's a hole carved into it there.
Yes.
Now we'd find this in quite a few of the sites now, and there's good evidence that these may have been early forms of Shiva lingams.
What's a Shiva lingam?
This is an ancient kind of traditional Indian or Southeast Asian stone installation of a phallus type kind of lingam, and then a yoni shaped bowl. And I don't know how, I've written a whole chapter about this actually, but Sayburch is interesting because the geometry of this enclosure is the same as what we're finding in the British stone circles. Same we're finding at Gobekli Tepe. You can see this is one of the egg shapes, very very specific.
Do you find these in ancient Indian sites as well?
No, I haven't properly looked just yet, but the whole Vedic connection with this part of the world is very, very interesting. Yep. We're looking into that more and more. But Sayburch, this is one of the key sites. And one of the interesting things about this as well is that this is right next to, if you look here, right, see on the left there, you've got all the kind of rock cut, square cut area. That essentially is a Roman quarry. Okay. They got that close to this enclosure, but didn't destroy it or harm it in any way. And so much so that just where that Roman quarry is, we're talking 2,000 years ago, there's this little area here, which they didn't touch. And this is an ancient Tepeler carving. It's this one here. So this is like a serpent head kind of shape with all this dots and kind of symbolism around it. It could be something to do with a serpent or a leopard, we don't know. But they left that alone and then stopped quarrying there. So there's a theory, which I'm putting forward, that the Romans discovered Tepeler, the whole...
Wow.
Because there's a Roman quarry very close to Karahan Tepe on the opposite hill. There's a Roman quarry not too far from another big one right next to Sayburch itself on another hill. And there's also one near Gobekli Tepe as well. And so this is odd. So there's a good chance. And I'm sure if I scan through any old Roman Latin text, we're going to find something. They found certain things.
Yeah, they would have documented this. Have you been able to date those quarries so we know when in the empire they happened?
No. This is something I haven't looked into yet, but it's just that this anomaly here at Sayburch really caught my attention.
Because you could see someone like Hadrian would have been respectful of these.
Well, this is what I mean. There seems to be this respect.
Yep.
Because they weren't destroying anything. They were getting right up close to it, and when they saw something, they stepped back and left it alone. Mm-hmm. Probably just thought, leave that. We don't want to mess with the
superstitious
kind of, the spirits or anything like this. So this is like what's happening at Sayburch. They started excavating this a couple of years ago. Giant megaliths, rock cut zones, big U-shaped stones as well as T-shapes. This head was found. We knew about this months ago before it got announced to the public, but we had to keep quiet about it, in respect to the family member who told us about it. like C-3PO looking dude.
Yeah.
And then this is what it actually looks like in full. They've actually found this, the rest of the statue. Very bizarre looking thing.
So we see that V shape quite a bit, don't we?
We're going to see, you see the V-neck thing quite a bit. And if you look at his mouth, it looks like it's sort of being sewn up. And his eyes look a bit like what people call mollusk shells.
Yes.
This is a tradition in the Levant of burial where they would sew the mouth up and put mollusk shells and then plaster the corpse. So is that a representation of that? Already looked at Gobekli Tepe, but there's some other sites here we might want to have a quick look at. So we looked at Navali Chori as well. This is one of the sites that was being excavated way back in the 1980s. By Klaus Schmidt. This is what inspired him and made him realize there was something significant at Gobekli Tepe from the original discovery there in 1963. But when he was excavating this place, it was by the river. It was by the kind of Euphrates River, and a stream coming off. It was called the Kantara Stream, and they found these square enclosures. And they found this building on the bottom right here. Really, really bizarre. This is, I've done a whole thing about this in the upcoming book about innovations of the Tepeler people.
This is a strange building.
So there was an actual 16-meter long building. So what's that, like 50 odd feet?
Yeah.
And underneath it had these kind of carved channels. Yeah. So what would happen is, and inside the building, it would have these little stones you can move and you can open them up. And so the water from the freezing cold stream would come in.
Oh my goodness.
And they would open up the little things and it would cool the whole air down.
This is a central air system.
This is the first air conditioning in the world.
Wow.
And so this is 8,300 BC. So little innovations like that get overlooked, but if you look into it, you're like, hang on a sec. There's a reason they're doing these little things. Of course. Yeah. This is the terrazzo. This is where terrazzo was first discovered in this region. It became famous, even though they found older versions of it now. This is kind of what some of it looks like. They have larger stones within the cement type mix. And this is the Vedic connection. This is a very large stone head, probably about this big, that was found at Navali Chori. It's a shaved head with a serpent on the back of it. It looks like a Sika ponytail of a Vedic priest. This is where the Vedic connection really began. People kind of think, well, how on earth could this design be here? What's going on? We have other things like this as well. This is like a kind of wing. This is what Andrew calls the first kind of angel, because it's got a winged robe coming around. This very strange looking creature. It's only about this big. It's only about a foot tall. And again, that's from Navali Chori. And we have this totem pole as well, from Navali Chori as well. Again, another 3D scan. So you have like a vulture on top, you have a human figure, you have other kind of serpentine elements to it. Much of it's been broken off. But you can see almost it shows the different kind of hair and everything else and the wings.
What's your take on the vulture Cygnus connection with the constellation?
Well, that's actually something that Andrew's very much into. He believes that the different orientations of the enclosures at Gobekli Tepe significantly mark the different movements of Cygnus as they change over the centuries. And he believes that there was like a kind of portal into the Milky Way where the soul would travel after death.
Right.
Because often these hold stones, at Gobekli Tepe at least, are in the north where, the soul would go to, and then into the Milky Way, into the Dark Rift. And it was all these, and he discovered all these traditions that may be associated with that. So there's this Cygnus alignment, certainly with these temples. And I think that's very profound, in my opinion. There's also a southern alignment that other archaeoastronomers have put towards Sirius as well.
Sure.
And they're now finding that in Malta, and a woman called Lenny Ridgick, a brilliant author, who thinks that the Maltese temples could be almost as old as Gobekli Tepe, because they're all aligned to Sirius as well. And with the solstice alignments as well, it proves these guys are star watchers. I mean,
for sure.
You can't. And so the problem I have is that the archaeologists are very strongly stating these people weren't looking at the sky because they had roofs over them. And I'm thinking, well, a solstice alignment works with a roof.
Sure.
Even the Sirius and Cygnus alignments could work with a roof because you're looking on the horizon.
Correct.
So you'd be below the roof.
That's where you would measure it. You wouldn't measure it up in the sky.
Between the T-pillars in the gap there. So there's that's one of the issues. And so all our research gets pushed aside as fringe research.
Yep.
Because they had roofs, but there's no actual evidence for roofs. I mean, over the main enclosures, over the smaller enclosures, the later ones people may have lived in, yeah. But they haven't found any actual physical evidence for roofs. None. All they found is 2 negatives of where wood may have been. Only a couple or 3 meters long, maximum 10 feet long each.
Right.
But that isn't even long enough to go between 2 T-pillars in some cases. And so it's a big question mark of like, what is going on here? Why are they forcing this narrative into our brains, onto Wikipedia, into all the academic kind of history books and things like this?
Yeah, good luck editing the Gobekli Tepe page. They won't let you do it.
Tell me about it. Yeah, I know. And so, I've not even bothered to think about that. And so we don't know if there are roofs or not. But if evidence comes forth, we'll accept it and we'll work it. We think the astronomy, a lot of it can still work with certain gaps in roofs, certain windows. Even if you're looking high up in the sky at stars, if you've got just one window, you get a really precise, you're sitting on this specific stone bench, which is carved out of bedrock, looking up at a certain spot. You can watch the movement really clearly. This is how Native Americans did it in their kivas and things like this. And so it's the same principle. So I think, people have got to look at that again, and like accept that there could be something going on. And I think Martin Sweatman's work has really pushed the idea in the academic world, because he got peer-reviewed, scientific papers.
Didn't he really struggle to get that published, though?
He did, but he did get it published. Yeah. That's the thing. And it went ballistic all over the world. So that's opened up our research. It's allowed our research to have a bit of leeway. And actually, we're working with Martin. I'm kind of working on him, trying to get him to incorporate our winter solstice alignment into his Karahan Tepe research, because we think it all fits. We think it's the same. His calendar he's found there. We think the winter solstice sunrise alignment, the Stonehenge getting illuminated, would be the marker to begin the calendar every year, if it was a calendar. And so, there's a lot to come in the future.
It must be because the Sumerians were so calendar focused that they had to get that information from somewhere. And their knowledge of the circle and 360 degrees and all of that.
Well, they also had a lunisolar calendar as well. We know that. And so this is what was being found in the Karahan Tepe's pillar shrine. It's also being found on pillar 43 at Gobekli Tepe. And so it's highly likely that influences came forth from this particular area.
Sure.
So I'm just, I have to pause for a second. Let me just check this.
Take your time. I interrupted you. I apologize.
That's cool.
I just get excited.
Let's just check this. I want to find this, couple of these other, I just want to kind of cover this. Yeah, this is probably quite useful actually, because we were talking about the astronomy. I want to just cover this. So this is the alignments we were talking about. This is, on the left, you've got the northern sky. That's the main strip image there. On the right, you've got the southern sky. And you've got some of the symbolism we're putting here as well, which may be astronomical. For example, the H and the O and the moon symbol on the right, that's on one of the central T-pillars, like the neck, kind of insignia area where the V-neck is. And they could represent, according to B.G. Siddharth and J.J., that could represent the Gemini twins, because these isn't just an H symbol. It's 2 figures facing each other, holding kind of hands or dancing or something.
Yep.
Below that, you've got a lunar and a solar symbol as well, which is really, really interesting. You've also got at the bottom of the pillar, on the base there, 7 flightless birds, which could represent Pleiades, some people say.
Right, the 7 sisters.
Yeah, and also you've got this little artifact, it's only about this big, about 3 inches tall, carved on bone it looks like a person looking between 2 T-pillars at the night sky, possibly with Cygnus carved on the bone plaque as well. And so you get all these little symbolism, all this little sort of symbols on these, pieces of stone. And yet according to the archaeologists, there's nothing going on there to do with that.
Yeah, they say there's no astronomy at these sites.
Absolutely.
So in the southern sky looking at Gemini, then Orion would also factor in as well.
Yeah, and you get Taurus as well and other such things. In fact, JJ's done a lot of research on what's called the Golden Gate of the ecliptic, and how she thinks the whole north to the southern sky were moving along this certain path. She's actually very smart and got this all down. She's going to be putting a whole chapter in the book about it. And so it incorporates all these different elements, and also into earlier myths from different areas we're doing this, and later cultures as well. And so the astronomical side of it, I think, really needs to be, properly examined.
Yep.
And this is, what was I going to show you here? Yeah, I want to show you a couple of these other sites in the area before I don't want to miss these. So this is a really interesting little figurines from Göbekli Tepe. This is the last site in Tepeler in the whole region. And they found, the first place they started finding, they kind of found one at Gobekli Tepe, but they're not sure, a goddess figurine, like a kind of full-bodied woman figurine, which were later, like in the Maltese temples, as you can see here.
Yes.
These are from Malta, these are from Hagahim. And on the right, that's the one from Göbekli Tepe, which later developed really strongly in places like Malta, which could be just after Gobekli Tepe.
Yep.
The new dating is now being put forward. But Sefir Tepe is another site here. This is a very recent discovery of these 2 stone faces carved on this giant megalithic bench.
I was again obsessed with the polish on that.
Yeah, I mean, that really is, I mean, the stonework is just, it gets really, really bizarre. Then you have this, like a mace head carved out of volcanic basalt. Two sides to it as well.
So it's like a ring shape. What do you think? Do you think that a staff went in there?
I think so. Yeah, it looks like it's the top of a kind of staff.
It does.
It really does. You got two faces, one on either side, one kind of open, and then you got say birch as well, which we looked at already. But there's so many sites now being uncovered in this area. It just gets more epic the more you look into it.
How many Tepe sites do you think there are?
There's 12. This is like the Tepeler super civilization, I call it. But there's a lot more being excavated. There's more that even on this official this map that came out.
What does your gut tell you? How many are going to be found?
I think there's going to be hundreds.
Hundreds?
Yeah, I think so, because I don't think this is limited to this area. I think they're going to start finding them in other areas of Turkey. They're going to find them in the Levant. They're going to find them off the coast underwater, which they've already started doing.
Right.
There's going to be more and more found, I think. I think it's going to kind of, really in the process of rewriting an entire history of the planet.
Well, look at the resources that are required here. These are clearly very important places.
Oh.
Very important places.
And this shouldn't have been happening back then. This is the end of the last ice age. It was actually in the ice age, a lot of these sites.
Right.
That's what's so baffling.
Bonkuku goes back to when the ice shelf was there, no?
Yeah, much further to the east of this, you've got Bonchoklutala, you've got Kortik Tepe, you've got Grifilahoyuk as well. These are a whole series of sites. There's even Cheyanu's up in that area as well, Cheyanu Tepesi. These are fascinating places. Some of them predate Gobekli Tepe. So there's and these are all along the Tigris River. So you've got the Tigris River where all these sites are going back 1,000 or more years before Gobekli Tepe. And all the Tepeler sites are closer to the Euphrates River, the rivers of paradise,
right.
The biblical tradition. And they both go right down into Levant, into Iraq and other places as well, where traditionally those rivers are more famous for being there. But these sites over in that area are really interesting because at Kortik Tepe, for instance, you actually find quite small stones like this size. You can hold them in your hand or 2 hands, and they have 3D relief carvings of abstract animals and figures, and they're 500 to 1,000 years older than Gobekli Tepe.
Wow.
It's showing 3D relief carving abstract forms. So what's going on there? I mean, so this could be where that idea came from and then blew up in the whole of Tepeler. So the jury's out on what is going on here. Were these trading between each other? Were they kind of against each other? Did they start blending and bringing their ideas together? And I think there's a bit of everything in there. I think it's all going to come to light eventually when more excavation is done.
Because we don't have any records, right? We don't get anything until the Phoenicians.
Yeah, all you've got really is really Sumerian, Phoenicians. Even the Hittites in some respects. You got the Hattians before them.
Keeping records.
Yeah, and that's it really. Egypt as well.
Well, Gilgamesh, they say, is much older than when it was written down. It could be this old.
That's what actually I think Graham Hancock wrote an article about that.
Did he?
That say birch, the narrative scene at say birch is actually could be a representation of the whole Gilgamesh story, which is really intriguing.
I almost said, holy shit.
Yeah.
I need to read that.
Yeah, that's really... So there's lots of these... I mean, so little has been excavated. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. We need more. When more is excavated, suddenly it's all going to come into view. We're going to know what's going on.
Does the government cooperate?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work now. There's Japanese teams coming in. There's teams from Germany, England, and other parts of the world all coming in and working on this project. So many of these sites are starting to get excavated. The most recent one is going to be Ayan Lahoyak. Got a Japanese team who just started on that like 2 months ago.
And it's a new discovery?
We've known about it. In fact, let me show you this. You're going to like this. This is very interesting, actually. Because Ayan Lahoyak was one of the sites that was announced as one of the 12 Tepeler sites when it was all put out there in 2021. So we went to have a look at it ourselves, I think in like 2022. Let me just see if I can find this, because this is pretty cool. And I can't find it. Where is it? And we actually found ourselves, this is it, fascinating place, a Tepeler lying on the ground in a field.
There's no question that's what
that's
that
a
is.
Tepeler. It's got a carving on it as well. You can't really see it in this image, but there's actually a small 3D relief carving on one side of it. I mean, it's been like ploughed over.
Yeah, but there's the plates again.
There's the plates, and we got to know the locals. They showed us all these artifacts. And they've just started excavating. And we discovered this, me and JJ, in 2020. We were just driving. We're just going to look in this field. I've got a feeling there's something in there. Just found a Tepeler on the floor. Oh, what the hell? And so that really got us. And then every year we go back just to check in on our little pet Tepeler. Yeah. It's still there every time. No one's taken it. It hasn't been put in a museum. Hasn't been collected.
Well, where there's one, there's got to be 11 more, right?
Oh my God, yeah. There's going to be a lot more. The thing with Ayan Lahoyak, this is going to blow people away. This is going to be bigger than Gobekli Tepe.
Okay.
Yeah, this is going to be huge. And I think that, it's this map here, you can see there's 6, possibly 7 large mound areas. Whereas Gobekli Tepe's got like 4 of those, possibly, And so that's going to open things up, I think. Yeah, quite dramatically. Yeah, Ayan Lahoyak. And that actually means giant that eats.
That's what that means?
Yeah, that's the translation, which I think is pretty cool.
The giants keep coming up.
Yeah.
Where are you on giants? Are you a giant believer? What were they?
I'm a bit of a giantologist.
Okay.
You could say that.
All right.
With my good friend Jim Vieira, we've written a couple of books, one on the giants of North America called Giants on Record, and also another one called The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain. And we are like, we're kind of a little bit skeptical. We debunk tons of the giant accounts that we've come across. We're not like, we're not just trying to, sell a book, for a story. We genuinely find it a fascinating subject.
I do too.
Really fascinating.
There's got to be something to it because it shows up in every culture, every myth.
Yeah, and you look at like North America is profound. This is profound here because it's the work of Ross Hamilton, who wrote the book A Tradition of Giants, that got me into all this. He's an absolute legend. We call him the godfather of giantology. That's his nickname, or the GOG, GOG. And he's based in Ohio, so he's in that whole area. And it was his book that really blew my mind because he uncovered hundreds of accounts, but we've uncovered thousands of accounts now. We feature only 250 in our book. 250, but even then we knew of 1,000
accounts from newspapers,
newspapers, academic journals, doctors' reports, people who just dig them up and send them to the Smithsonian, never to be seen again.
Then they disappear, right?
And then even the Smithsonian's own annual reports they published every year or two, some of them are in there, up to 7 feet, 8 feet tall.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, actually, and we've done a whole chapter called the Smithsonian Files in the book just to cover that. Obviously, Nevada has a whole load. We've looked into Lovelock Cave.
Right, the red hair giants.
Yeah, the Winnemucca petroglyphs and things like that, which are 14 or more thousand years old, which are pretty mind-blowing.
Yep.
But really, it's the mound culture where the real giants are, and the Adena people especially. But up in New York State, we found loads. Up in New England, all the megalithic chambers you have up there. It is mental. It's mind-blowing. I cannot quite understand.
Maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought like the ancient word for Stonehenge was something about giants in the early days.
It was called the Giants' Dance.
It was called that's what it was.
Or in Welsh, the Choria Gigantum.
A lot of coincidences. And Malta, we talked about giants building out that.
Yeah,
Enoch has the Book of Giants.
You got the goddess Sansuna in Malta, but with Stonehenge though.
Yeah.
So you have this giant myth. Story that kind of like the giants built Stonehenge. They originally, this is all from the History of the Kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth, 12th century document, that the stones were originally taken to Ireland and they were placed there at a site called Killarus. And then much later, King Ambrosius, who was the kind of king at the time, sent Uther Pendragon over with a 15,000 strong army to go and collect the stones of Killarus, the giant's dance, and bring them to the Salisbury Plain to raise these stones in honor of the slain victims of a war that had taken place. But they couldn't do it. The 15,000 strong army couldn't move one stone. So they had to send Merlin, the magician, over there.
I love this story.
He went and got them by using sleight or magic in some stories, or pulleys and, technology in other stories. And so somehow, and he did it on his own and brought them over to Salisbury Plain. That's the story. But originally the stones had come from the furthest reaches of Africa and brought over by a race of giants at the very first phase of this.
Has that geology been confirmed?
Well, they've actually found trilithons in Libya.
Oh,
actual trilithons, actually megalithic, what look like Stonehenge, which is bizarre. There's myths of giants in that area as well. But there's more stories of giants around Stonehenge. One of them is a book that was written in 1666 called A Fool's Bolt Soon Shot at Stonehenge by Reverend Robert Gay was his name. He lived in Somerset. And he was a bit of an anarchist for his time. But he wrote this book and he found out all these old legends of Stonehenge, that it was actually built by a tribe of giants called the Kangik Giants. It's all in the book. So we cover all this in the book as well. And that they had built it as a place to honor their dead as well. But also, there's actual giant accounts. Actually, giant burials were found near Stonehenge.
Skeletons, large skeletons?
Yeah, in 1719, just in a mound called the Giant's Grave, in Salisbury, which is a few miles south of Stonehenge, they found a 9-foot 4-inch skeleton, and it was reported in numerous newspapers at the time. Before that, in the early 1500s, Sir Thomas Eliot, he was the gentleman who wrote the first Latin dictionary. He was a well-known scholar, educated at Cambridge, places like this. He discovered a 14-foot, 10-inch skeleton in a log coffin in the grounds of what became known as some kind of abbey in the area, but it was obviously a much earlier burial, buried very deep in the ground. Mm-hmm. And it had this strange metal disc with all these inscriptions on it. And also this book with these inscriptions on it.
Where is this? This
is near Stonehenge.
No, do these artifacts still exist?
No, they disappeared within a few years. But this was reported on by very, very famous people. I mean, Thomas Eliot is a well-known, well-known guy. And so there's lots of people went and witnessed this and reported on it. But the range of height went from 12 foot 10 inches to 14 foot 10 inches. It changed with different accounts. But this was documented, and I was like, how can this be ignored? No one knows about this. And it's in all these old books. Then, this inscriptions on it, no one knows what they were or what happened to they called it a tin and lead disc. Somehow they knew it was made of tin and they had all these inscriptions on it. But the skeleton crumbled to dust, and that was the end of that. Oh. But very odd. And then you have, if you actually go to Salisbury now, this is like the city near where I live, in the museum there, they have a giant on display. No, not a skeleton. This is like a paper mache giant.
Okay.
But the thing is, this is part of an old tradition where the giant, since the 1400s, the secret societies in this area, the Tailors Guild and other such things, they would parade this giant around the town just after the summer solstice on St. John the Baptist Day. And then have this hobby horse following it around, all clearing the path so it wouldn't fall on people. And this was going on since the 1400s. And he became known as Saint Christopher. Now, for those that know biblical saints, you'll know that Saint Christopher was a Canaanite giant from the Bible lands.
That's right.
Who carried Jesus over on his shoulder across a river when Jesus was a baby, and turned away from this whole kind of warrior caste that he was involved with the Canaanites, and became like this, a Christian, if you like. And but how is all this connected? All these weird stories connected. I mean, we go into it in great detail in the book. Obviously, we kind of uncover all these old texts and kind of piece it all together, because it seems to be this Canaanite biblical story connected with Stonehenge.
Could this be Nephilim? Is there Nephilim actually on Earth?
Could be. Who knows? I mean, it gets weird. I mean, there's a lot of accounts in Wiltshire and the the southwest of England when it comes to that. But, while we're on the subject of Stonehenge, I mean, I want to just mention this because this is really interesting. It fits back in with what we were talking about. So we have Stonehenge here. This is an aerial photograph on the summer solstice. You can see the way that the light from the stone on the far right there, kind of, it's like a kind of phallic shadow penetrating the kind of feminine circle and things like this. It's all like symbolic. But this solstice alignment, the famous summer solstice alignment at Stonehenge, there's a much older one there. It goes back 10,000 years. So this is why I think the Gobekli Tepe, explorers were coming to this part of the world.
Right.
Because they found these 10,000-year-old large pine post holes where the car park used to be. There used to be 3 blobs of paint in a car park. Is an artist's impression of what they would have looked like. Could have been up to 30 feet tall. And they know it was pine. They found charcoal and dated it. That they estimated the height based upon the width and depth. And these were east-west, more or less. And they were within 30 yards of Stonehenge, where it is now. But also, in Stonehenge, you have... I have to explain this a little bit. In Stonehenge, you got this right at the bottom there, you got the Stonehenge circle. But in there, they found this mound, which was 10,000 years old, so 5,000 years before Stonehenge was built. And it was like, they found this Mesolithic kind of stuff inside there, which is basically, it means that age before the Neolithic. But then they found from there, along going to the northeast, they found these parallel ridges called periglacial strips. These are natural features. But if you're inside at that mound, looking down these natural features, it's the summer solstice sunrise. Yeah, which is really interesting. And then at the far bottom of the hill, there's another mound was constructed called Newell's Mound, based upon the guy who found it. But then later, so that was all happening 10,000 years ago. They may have been looking at the solstice. And in the opposite direction, it's the winter solstice sunset.
Right.
But then later, they create Stonehenge around this mound, and where the periglacial strips are, they carve out an avenue going in exactly the same direction. And now that's the one everyone celebrates for the summer solstice.
Yep.
So this was happening 5,000 years earlier. They were probably studying the summer solstice at Stonehenge before any stones were put in place. And it's now known that Amesbury, where I live, this whole area, this is the oldest continually inhabited area of the whole of Britain. There's a site called Blickmead just down the road from there, which was a known kind of gathering site. There's a spring there. Dr. David Jux is a brilliant archaeologist. I know him personally. I've been to a few digs they found. They actually found evidence going older than that now in the area. In Amesbury, they found going back 12,000 years ago, not just 10,000. So that puts it right into the frame of Gobekli Tepe. So they were doing the solstice here 10,000 years ago at least. Possibly, it could have been earlier. Now they found these earlier dates.
Because we keep running up against, almost feels like a hard limit of the Ice Age.
Yeah.
It feels like we can't get too far beyond that.
Yeah, that is because, especially in the northern climate here, you're going to have a lot of ice.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have, I forget the name, but you have the kind of, the warm strips of heat coming over from the Atlantic and everything, warming things up in Britain. Still happens today. And so a lot of England would have been cleared of ice by the end of the last ice age. And so they could have got to Stonehenge easily. They could have got, because it would have been joined to Europe because of Doggerland.
That's right.
So they could have walked there.
And that was fringe theory for a long time.
I know.
They found habitation there.
But what they found as well is, I'm not sure if I got it here. Yeah, so this is actually one of my photos from the summer solstice. That's the alignment going. It's all covered in mist, the avenue. But it's pretty beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful experience doing that. And okay, let me just find this one image, because what they found is even if you go further north, much further north than Stonehenge, you can go all the way up to, it should be here, here it is, yeah. So you can go all the way up to Aberdeenshire, and this area here would have been just free of ice at the end of the last, towards the end of the last ice age, yeah. And Professor Vince Gaffney, he came and spoke at our conference partly about this. They found another site there called Warren Field. This goes back to 10,000 years ago as well. And they found, again, these giant post holes, all in this arc going across this field. And they found to their surprise, that it aligned not only to the winter solstice sunrise, but it also marked the different moon phases. So it was like a lunisolar calendar. And somehow they encoded that. They call it the kind of Warrenfield time reckoner, which is a pretty cool name.
It is.
And they were doing that 10,000 years ago. They were measuring the moon and the sun on the winter solstice. And so to me, I have to question, who would be doing this? Unless there was a project in place to go and study this.
This is ancient knowledge, tens of thousands of years.
So this goes back at least 10,000 years ago. And you got also this happening at Stonehenge. And so the thing is, the further north you go, the more you realize when you're studying the movements of the sun and the moon, especially because the moon, it literally doesn't, go below the horizon when you get to a certain latitude north, like in Orkney and places like that, that you would have easily been able to know this. You could have worked out the size and shape of the Earth by these observations and measurements quite easily.
Right, just from the shadows, I think.
Yeah. At certain times a year, as long as you stick to the same date, you can get different shadow lengths and things like this.
Yep.
And so that is fascinating to me. So these are the little clues that I think the people of Gobekli Tepe were a scientific research project moving around the planet, all in different directions. They wanted to go as far north as they could. That was the primary thing, I think. And then you have the Book of Enoch. Not only do they talk about taking cords and going off to measure, they describe horrific weather, which would have been appropriate for Scotland.
That's right. He talks about the winds being born and things like that.
Yeah, really extreme weather, and also like really short days and long nights, which you would get the further north you go. Things like this. Lots of little clues you keep finding. And so, I mean, this is, again, we can't prove this yet or ever, I don't know, but hopefully one day. But it's an interesting idea, because why were they making all these detailed measurements, all these different latitudes? Because the Stonehenge latitude is quite interesting as well. Because,
is it?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting because the summer solstice sunrise alignment, which is also the winter solstice sunset alignment, is marked at that specific latitude to go at a certain angle. But it's also got what's called the 4 station stones, like a rectangle, around the edge of Stonehenge. And each of the alignments between these 4 stones mark the different extreme moon cycles of the 18.6-year Metonic moon cycle. And they perfectly form this rectangle. And then directly adjacent to that, perfectly, perpendicular to that, is the summer solstice alignment. It's all just boom, it works. But if you were to go 20 miles south or north, that whole rectangle would warp to get the same results.
Right.
So it's almost like they chose that latitude because it was important to them to make certain measurements of the moon combined with the solstice. So when you start looking at different latitudes, you find these different things. You mentioned this earlier, quite interested in latitudes. I really got to credit the work of Howard Crowhurst. He's a great guy to talk to as well. He's a minefield of information. And he's found that they were using different latitudes. In Britain, he started, that's where he lives. He's English, but he lives there. And he found all these different latitudes very much focused on, they would mark where the sun would rise, the solstices, it would mark exactly the 3-4-5 triangle and things like this. Then when you go up to different latitudes in different parts of the world, it would mark different angles, like the golden section or the triple square or something like this. And so all these different ideas started emerging, and he's written a lot about this. He's done it in England, he's done it in Britain, he started applying it to Tepeler as well. And I think we're going to find more and more of that there was this scientific, very ancient project to go and measure the Earth and study what was going on. And it was probably to do with after the last ice age. It was to do with, because there's cataclysm had taken place, things had changed. They wanted to, probably a lot of stuff got lost, a lot of sites destroyed, a lot of information went astray.
Well, clearly there's technology that's gone.
Yeah.
That just disappeared.
I mean, but even with these, you don't need that much technology. You just need to be at the place and actually make the observations and keep the records, usually encoded in myths and stories.
Do you think there was practical reasons for this? Not so much ritualistic, but we need to measure this stuff so we don't go through that again.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah. They wanted to, maybe it was a way of, studying the sky to see if anything else like that may occur in the future. And actually, you did a video about this based on Martin Sweatman's research about the cataclysm and how Pillar 43 may encode that.
Yes.
And it was like a warning and a concern. They wanted to get something down in stone so they could warn their future ancestors and things like this. So it could be the same principle. Maybe the information that eventually ended up in places like Gobekli Tepe may have been collected from these people going around and collecting it from these different areas of the planet. So it's pretty epic when you get into it.
It is. Did you study any of Venus cycles?
Only a little, because that often works along with the winter solstice.
Yes.
And so we found that, we do find that at Karahan Tepe. And this is really because in a book called Uriel's Machine, by Robert Lonas and Christopher Knight, it's a fantastic book. I don't know if you've read it, and absolutely brilliant piece of work. And they found that Newgrange and even Brinkedley D, another burial chamber in Wales, in Anglesey, had this potential Venus alignment, which would occur around the time of the winter solstice every 8 years.
Right.
And it would be bright enough to illuminate the inside of the chamber like the sun does on the winter solstice at Newgrange. So we applied that to Karahan Tepe. Same thing occurs there. The starlight, at certain times every 8 years, if the conditions are correct, it would be bright enough before sunrise to shine through the porthole stone and illuminate the stone head.
That same stone?
Yeah, the one we were talking about earlier. Possibly, we tried to do that in December, but the problem was this part of the cycle is that Venus was too close to the sun, so you couldn't really see it.
Right,
it's hidden behind the light of the sun, and so. But another few years, you might be able to catch it a couple of hours before the sun, and then it's going to come up bright, and you can catch a slight illumination in exactly the same place of the sun a few hours later.
I love the theory that the Star of Bethlehem could actually be Venus, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the calibration. It's not a star, it's a planet, but it's a calibration of calendars as well, because it repeats a cycle every 8 years and it has longer cycles where it returns to its exact position. Which can calibrate a longer cycle as well, which is what we know the Mayans and possibly the Olmecs were doing as well. So there's a lot going on in this part of the world, potentially. I think
there is. Any more slides you want to show us before we let you go?
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we have a quick look at this?
I'll keep you here another hour if you want.
Yeah, okay. Want to have a quick while we're talking about, we mentioned the Mayan and the Olmecs. I want to just mention this because this is like it's actually a new discovery in Olmec land. Not many people know about this. This is quite a well-known Olmec head. This is the largest Olmec head at La Capata in the Santiago Tuxtla town square in Mexico. They found 17 of these heads, but a potential 18th has been found, which I want to just quickly show you. Now, this one's actually from Tres Zapotes. This is one of the known ones, but you like the 3D scans, so I just thought I'd show this. Shows you some really beautiful little detail on it. These are gigantic. I mean, some of these are up to 40 tons.
40 tons.
Most of them are about 15, 20.
Would they have been resting on the ground back then? What was the purpose of these?
Yes, these would have been resting on the ground.
Right there?
Yeah. They wouldn't have had necks or bodies or anything like that. But yeah, these are fascinating to me. This is one of them. I mean, this is much later. This is like 1500 BC at the earliest, really.
What do you think that hole is there for?
That I'm not sure about. I mean, you get a lot of this kind of obscure kind of carvings on these. But what I wanted to really show you is this new discovery from La Venta. This is only discovered like less than a year ago, and it's not been documented by anything academically. A couple of friends of mine, Luke Caverns, he went there. I've visited it as well, and we kind of reported on it. And the one remaining Olmec site you can visit is 1500 or 1200 BC in Tabasco State. High-level cartel activity there now. It was very dangerous when we were there, actually. But this is a very bizarre statue that was found. And it's like a female statue. It's kind of got this kind of feminine, yoni kind of look to it. And it's beautifully shaped and carved. It's got an interior with carvings inside it. It's partly broken. But what on earth is this? But this is so bizarre. I just got to look at this again. Look at this. I mean, you've got an entrance into it. It's almost like a female, labia and things like that.
It does.
It's very, very interesting. And nothing like this I've seen in Olmec land. I've been going to Olmec land for 15 plus years. And so there are new discoveries still being made in places like this as well.
No, the phallus you see all the time, but rarely do you see something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the opposite, really.
The other side.
And then I had a chance, which is I've been wanting to go here for literally over 15 years. This is the quarry of the Olmecs. This is called Lano de Jicaro, and I didn't know the location is hidden. No one knew the location. Only one archaeologist who we happened to bump into in a museum that he happens to be the curator of, Alfredo Delgado at Jalapa Museum. Doesn't speak any English. We speak very little Spanish, but we still managed to work out, can you take us to the quarry? And he said, yes. We were like, oh. So we got to go. And like the thing about this quarry is that it's still used till relatively recently as a sacred place, like where offerings are still made on some of the stones. And there's loads of megaliths still there. Like this one here, for instance, is a half-carved megalith.
So no one knows where this is?
No. I mean, even if I had the location of it, the GPS of it, and I went there, I wouldn't be able to find it.
Right.
Because it's scattered around like several acres in private land, but it's boiling hot. It's like you can't see the stones unless you clear away the kind of the grass and everything. But what he thinks he's found there is another Olmec head. This one here is literally sitting beneath me there, and this is like a big discovery. But no one's interested. It's like it's not really been documented at all. And this is a 3D scan I got. But you got to remember, this has not been carved yet. This is the first phase of them digging this Olmec head out of the ground.
Right.
And so, yeah, not much to look at now, but it's the first, piece of the puzzle. And so I just want to put this on here because people are, got to realize there's stuff still being found. There's stuff still hidden in places like this. And when it comes to, the whole Tepeler sites, there's going to be a lot more coming out of there as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm just absolutely fascinated by that, about what is coming out of the ground.
Hugh Newman, thank you so much for coming in today. This has been a joy.
My pleasure.
This has been a treat. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
I really appreciate it.
Buy his books, and where can we find you online?
Yeah, sure. They could just Google my name, Hugh Newman. Okay. Pretty easy to find. Also, we have the Megalithomania.co.uk website. We have a Megalithomania YouTube channel and things like that.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, we got 1,000+ videos on there and other such things. They can just contact us through there. I mean, we do the conference every May. It's our 20th anniversary. You can come along if you want to come to fancy town called Glastonbury. And we do another conference called the Origins Conference, sometimes in November in Wiltshire. And we go much more into the deep origins of civilization, that kind of vibe, a bit less megaliths, but more super ancient stuff. And that's a collaboration with Andrew Collins as well. And we do take groups out as well to many of these sites we've been talking about. We take tours out there. That really helps us because it helps fund our projects because we're completely independent. This is like a full-time thing. We really want to have time to focus on our research and getting the books out and getting the research, put in place. And it takes a lot of time and energy, as you know, with this kind of thing. When you're researching your shows, it's pretty intense. And we encourage people to, check out what we're up to and maybe join us in Turkey or in some other part of the world where we take groups to. We have a lot of fun. I'm
going to take you up on that. And next time you're in, we'll talk about the haunted house you live in.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Bye, everybody. So, Hugh Newman, that was dense, and we covered a lot, and I could have talked to him for another 2 hours. So, let's break it down. Here's what we can verify. Hugh is the real deal. He's been running the Megalithomania Conference since 2006. You've seen him on Ancient Aliens, all kinds of TV shows. He's published multiple books. I can prove it, I have the books. Giants of Stonehenge, Giants on Wreck. These are great. Books on giants. He published... I'll get there. It's not a professional operation. Earth's Grids, Stone Circles, and Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, the world's first megaliths. I know it's small, but it's good. It's good. Look, it's bigger than any book I ever wrote. Anyway, he's been to these places dozens of times, and he's not speculating from his couch. He's out there measuring T-pillars and flying a drone while dodging the Turkish military. Now, the sites themselves are well documented. Gobekli Tepe dates to around 9600 BC, and Karahan Tepe is dated to roughly 9400 BC. These are accepted dates from the German Archaeological Institute and ongoing Turkish excavations. The terrazzo floors, the 3D relief carvings, the bedrock engineering, that's all confirmed. We talked about Dr. Martin Swetton at the University of Edinburgh. He published a peer-reviewed paper in 2017 arguing that Pillar 43, that's the vulture stone, that encodes a date corresponding to the Younger Dryas impact. Now, it took them like 2 or 3 years to get that through. because it's controversial, but now it's published science, so things may be coming around. Alexander Thom, I've talked about him before. He's the guy who came up with the megalithic yard, 2.72 feet. He's found it all over ancient sites, and he came up with that number from surveying over 500 stone circles across Britain, and he published in Megalithic Sites in Britain in 1967. It's controversial, but it's fun. Now the big claims. Hugh says he's finding those same measurement systems, the megalithic yard, the Persian foot, the Sumerian foot. He says he's finding them at Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. Now, that would push back standardized metrology, which is the study of measurement. It would push that back 7,000 years earlier than mainstream archaeology accepts. I like annoying them. He also suggests the builders were measuring the Earth itself, encoding its dimensions into the distances between sites. 1 million Persian feet from Gobekli Tepe to Stonehenge. 1 million even. The diameter of the Earth encoded in the distance to Peru's Proconcha. Now these are huge claims, and I couldn't independently verify those specific distance calculations. And his measurement work at the Turkish sites hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, and he acknowledges that. But the numbers are interesting enough to keep watching. Now the winter solstice alignment at Karahan Tepe. Hugh and J.J. Ainsworth witnessed sunlight passing through a carved pothole and illuminating a stone head, only on the solstice. They've gone back multiple years and it keeps happening. You can go see for yourself. Now, if that's engineered, and it sure looks like it is, then these people understood precision astronomy 6,000 years before Stonehenge. Now that's a problem for the conventional timeline, and it's the kind of problem I like. Look, Hugh's a guy who shows up. He measures things. He puts his data out there for everyone to check out. He's not trying to sell you aliens or lost continents. He's just saying the math doesn't add up with the story that we've been told. And I think he's right that we need more disciplines at the table, like acoustics, astronomy, metrology, not just guys who study pottery. Now, if you want to go deeper, and you should, check out his books. Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe, The World's First Megaliths. That's the one to start with. That title's so big it hardly fits on the tiny book. I'm sorry, I'm just joking, of course. It's good, I read it last night. Start there. His YouTube channel, I'll probably link down below. It's Megalithomania UK, I think. He's got over 1,000 videos on there. I've been a sub of his for a long time. And if you ever see him talking to Andrew Collins, definitely watch those. His website is, I gotta read this, megalithomania.co.uk. Now, if you're feeling adventurous, he runs tours to these sites. Now, I'm thinking about taking one because he has access to places that most people can't get. Tim Hogan, we had on here a couple of weeks ago, is the same thing. I guess we have a lot of tours coming up. Now, I've done episodes that overlap a lot with what Hugh covered. Darren Kuyu, The Megalithic Yard, Proving Atlantis, Book of Enoch. I kept going back to Enoch because I'm obsessed with it. Giants of Malta is an episode. All worth a rewatch after this conversation. Did I get all of it? I think I did. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and know that you are appreciated.
In Area 51, a secret code inside the Bible said I would. I love my UFOs and paranormal fun, as well as music, so I'm singing it like I should. But then another conspiracy theory becomes the truth, my friends, and it never ends. No, it never ends. I feel the crap cat and got stuck inside Mel's hole with MK Ultra. I'm being only too aware. Did Stanley Kubrick fake the moon landing alone on a film set, or were the shadow people there? The Roswell aliens just fought the smiling man, I'm told, and his name was Cold. And I can't believe I'm dancing with the fish. Head to fish on Thursday nights with AJ2, and the Wi-Fi's happening all through the night. Oh, times and the solar storm still come to Agatha, the secret city underground. Mysterious number stations, planet Circle 2, Project Stargate, and what the Dark Watchers found. In a simulation, don't you